This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg, here in South Africa. My name, of course, Evan, and the show is live broadcast from our studios here in Auckland Park. Don't forget, the show streams live on YouTube between 9 and 12 every weekday morning. You can also watch it back on demand a little bit later in the day if you've missed any of the highlights on the show. Of course, Elvis, as you can see me standing by to give us a quick news update shortly. But before we go to Elvis, let's get to Anine Dormal, who's going to give us what's trending this morning so we can set up the news day.
Well, good morning, Evan. South Africans talking about that one-all draw against Honduras. And then also, we're almost halfway through Eco-Mobility Month. We have a look at what South Africans still have to say on Twitter about that.
And Evan, it's the mother of all marches, so says NUMSA. That's happening today. We'll also be taking a look at the new merger with SAB. Not everybody is happy about that, and Czech fugitive Kritcher is in the High Court. He wants special treatment, looks like it.
Once again, a medical supervision scenario playing out. Elvis will give us that shortly, but let's go to Kendall. The good news is Bafana come back with a big smile on their face from the South American tour.
You can call it a big smile, absolutely. They come back without having registered a single loss. They drew against Honduras, as Anine said a little earlier on, and the Proteas will be playing their second ODI against India. Should be starting shortly, but stay tuned for more in the Sports Bulletin.
But first, let's take a look at all your headlines. NUMSA hopes to hit the private and public sectors where it hurt the most as it embarks on an anti-corruption march. Czech fugitive Radovan Kritcher is to approach the High Court in Pretoria, asking it to grant him access to specified medical attention. And Israel gives police powers to seal off parts of East Jerusalem in response to a recent knife attack. Now, those are all your news headlines. Kendall Makamate is standing by with your sports news. Over to you, Kendall.
Thank you very much, Elvis. Let's take a quick sneak peek into what we've got in store for you in the sports later today. Bafana finished their whirlwind Central American tour with a one-all draw with Honduras. And the Proteas, with one ODI win under their belt already, take to the field today against under-pressure host India in the second of the five-match ODI series. And just 3 days away from D-Day, as the Springboks and the Dragons of Wales build up ahead of steam to their Rugby World Cup quarter-final clash. And that's your sports in a nutshell. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's now take a look at your top story this hour. They call it the mother of all marches. Trade union NUMSA has promised to hit private and public sectors where it hurts the most when it embarks on today's march against corruption and job losses. NUMSA's Deputy General Secretary Carl Klute says that they are expecting thousands of people to take part in the march in central Johannesburg today. He added that they will be demanding the strengthening of anti-corruption laws and the offices of the Public Protector and the Auditor General. The union has urged workers in other parts of the country to stay away from work in solidarity with the marchers. NUMSA is demanding that the National Treasury make organs of state comply with legislation to procure local goods and services. The union will be handing over its memorandum of demands to the Gauteng Legislature, the Reserve Bank and the Chamber of Mines. Czech fugitive Radovan Kritcher will today bring an urgent court application in the High Court in Pretoria, asking the court to grant him access to specified medical attention. He also wants his notebooks and documents that correctional services officials confiscated to be sealed to prevent third parties from going through them. Correctional Services earlier thwarted an apparent escape plan by the inmates, including Kritcher, at the Zonderwater Correctional Centre outside Pretoria. Kritcher reportedly wants his television set back, appropriate social interaction with other trial-awaiting prisoners, and a report to determine the suitability of access to facilities to have contact with his wife, children, and family overseas. He also said to demand a report about the suitability of providing him with exercise equipment. In the court papers filed at the High Court in Pretoria, Kritcher asked the court to rule that his medical information and details of the medical treatment not to be published. Correctional Services earlier foiled an apparent escape plan by the inmates, including Kritcher at the Zonderwater Correctional Centre outside Pretoria. Kritcher and 5 co-accused have been convicted of attempted murder, kidnapping and drug dealing, and sentencing is due to start later this month. Abatembu King Buyelekaya Dalinyebo will apply to have his bail extended today after the application was postponed yesterday. The King's appeal against a 12-year jail sentence was turned down last week, and he intends to approach the Constitutional Court. King Dalinyebo says he will argue that if customary law had been taken into consideration, he would not have been convicted. Western Cape police are looking for a second man following a shooting and suicide at the Cape Town train station yesterday. A woman became suspicious when she noticed 2 men dressed in black and wearing latex gloves. She notified security guards who approached the pair and a shootout ensued.
Margins are getting narrowed. It means there'll be cost cutting. They'll be able to make great savings. They'll have much more market penetration all around the world. The synergy is fantastic.
We apologize for that wrong insert. They will try and come back to that story. SAB Miller is continuing to make headlines. The global beer giant founded in South Africa has accepted, in principle, a new takeover bid from the rival brewer Anheuser-Busch InBev. SAB Miller had rejected previous offers, claiming that they substantially undervalued the company. And I would have thought that was my thoughts as well. However, observers say that the latest announcement is good news for shareholders.
Margins are getting narrowed. It means there'll be cost cutting. They'll be able to make great savings. They'll have much more market penetration all around the world. The synergy is fantastic.
Meanwhile, not everybody is happy. The Food and Allied Workers Union has raised concerns about the much talked about merger of SAB Miller with AB InBev. The union says it was not consulted.
We were not consulted about this transaction. As it is always the case, transactions that happens at the global level, there would be an in-principle agreement at that level, and these companies are bound by various antitrust laws to basically consult in various jurisdictions.
There are mixed reactions across the political spectrum over the government's intention to review its membership of the International Criminal Court. Some political parties agree with the review of South Africa's membership to the ICC, while others don't.
We, as the majority party in Parliament, will stand ready to ensure that an appropriate legislative process is put in place to unsign South Africa from this ICC.
We are very, very concerned at this resolution, particularly as it demonstrates the country's move away from foreign policy based on human rights.
EFF does not support ICC because we feel that ICC is only dealing with African leaders. But for ANC to say they are going to rush and pull out, I think is not a calculated move, because we feel that each and every system that is not progressive, we must fight within.
We are not altogether comfortable, with the decision because of the way it has come about that South Africa has taken this decision.
By doing this, we're sending a very bad message to the rest of the world that we are moving away from human rights, something like Mr. Mbeki tried to do. The implications can be that our very good arguments for South Africa and Africa to be part of the Security Council of the United Nations, that is very damaging for that type of argument.
The Israeli government has given police the power to seal off parts of East Jerusalem in response to a surge in attacks by Palestinians in recent days. It says the authorities can also demolish the homes of Palestinians who attack Israelis and revoke their right to live in Jerusalem. Israel's Security Cabinet approved the new measures at a late-night meeting after 3 Israelis were killed in Jerusalem yesterday. This were the latest in a series of attacks that have taken place in the city and elsewhere in Israel in recent weeks. The upsurge in violence follows increased tension over visits in the Al-Qasr Mosque compound. U.S. Secretary John Kerry says he will travel to the region in the next few days to try and calm the situation. And that's how we end this bulletin for now. Evan is standing by with your latest details in terms of some of the stories making headlines here on Newsroom.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis. Now, it's day 2 of the trifecta judgment. On the first day, deceased politician Yolanda Buerta came in for a scathing attack in a high-profile fraud trial in the Northern Cape High Court in Kimberley, that is. If I'm just going to check, we'll be live there shortly. Are we going to Anine first? We're going to Anine first to give us a quick wrap of what we can expect, well, on social media and the rest today. Anine, what do you have?
Well, even like I mentioned earlier, we've got that 1-1 draw against Honduras. That's been trending this morning. South Africans talking about that after the early morning match that we saw. But before we go into that, even Eco-Mobility Month, we're halfway through the month. What are South Africans saying on social media? Actually, we were supposed to be joined by the Mayor this morning. We'd really like to have heard what his experience has been so far. And I see that our digital team has also tweeted a few videos. I've retweeted it from SABC Newsroom if you would like to get some reaction from all of those commuters that now have to give up their cars and have to use buses and bikes to get to work. So, even also this morning we saw the Gautrain tweeting that their services they're expecting that the bus services will be disrupted because of the NUMSA march taking place today.
Yeah. Just to go back to Eco-Mobility,
Yes.
I heard business owners weren't very happy with the first couple of weeks of Eco-Mobility Month. Apparently, people are not coming into the business district in Sandton, and a retailer say they've lost up to 60% of their business thus far this month. Would have been interesting if the mayor was here this morning. Would have liked to talk to the mayor, but the mayor has had another engagement apparently.
Exactly, Evan, and also some of our journalists have tweeted how deserted Sandton has been, and if you've seen those visuals and those pictures, it literally looks like a ghost town, and I can understand why business owners are unhappy. So just to quickly get back to what the Gautrain has said, you can follow the Gautrain handle. They're saying that their Eco-Mobility Express services for buses, for those people not using their cars, that will not be affected by the NUMSA march today. And of course, we know that it has been called the mother of all marches. All NUMSA's members will be marching to the Chamber of Mines today. The inner city of Johannesburg will be affected. You can follow NUMSA. You can follow #anti-corruption-march on Twitter to get the latest and to also know what roads will be affected. But then also we are talking about Bafana this morning, all the South Africans, Honduras trending. We've got some comments on that. If we can just throw them up and see what South Africans are saying, that we've got a 1-1 draw. There we see #Honduras trending. That's what you can follow to get the latest on that and to share your views and tweet it to us also at SABC Newsroom. Well, we'll throw out those tweets a bit later, Evan.
Yeah, thank you very much, Anine. It's been an interesting week for Bafana actually. After their win against Costa Rica last week, I'm sure a lot of people were very happy. But today's big story, let's just have a look at it now. It's about the National Union of Metal Workers. It's their march, they marched today against corruption. They say it's meant to harm both public and private sectors. Where are we? We're going there? The NUMSA march. Let's have a look what people are saying. A lot of people saying that. Castro Ngabezi in this case says those are NUMSA members. Obviously, they'll be joining the anti-corruption march. We're talking about the anti-corruption. That's the biggest march. Gabriel says, I will be in Jersey today joining NUMSA march against corruption, he says. Colin Jacobs, happy NUMSA 14 October 2015 corruption action. They're calling it the biggest march. Last time round, we only had a couple of hundred people join it. FDS Drive says, what's the purpose of Section 27 of our Constitution? NUMSA, when there is a non-realization of fundamental rights. Now, let's move on and take a look at our picture of the day. That same man tweeted, Colin Jacobs, well, he talks about NUMSA PAL workers ready for the stay-away action in support of the Johannesburg corruption march as well as Cape Town rallies. Tools down. Do we have that picture today? There we have Colin Jacobs talking about the PAL workers ready for their stay-away action in support of the Joburg corruption march and Cape Town rallies. Tools down from the workers. That is our picture of the day today. Of course, we'll keep you updated all around all our platforms, how this story develops today. Let's move on and take a look now at the front pages from around the globe. We start in Europe, where the Times reports that Israeli police began to seal off Arab sectors in Jerusalem early today amid growing fears that the country stands on the brink of a new intifada. Then we move to New York, where the New York International Times says 15-month inquiry into the disintegration of Malaysian Airlines Flight 17 in the skies over eastern Ukraine has concluded that the aircraft was struck by a Russian-made missile. Dutch air accident investigators came to this conclusion yesterday. Then we move to the Middle East, Israel to be exact. The Jerusalem Post reports that the Security Cabinet met in a marathon session last night to approve measures that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promised the Knesset would convince the enemy that terrorism does not pay. Let's come back to South Africa and take a look at what's happening around the country. We start in the capital, Pretoria, where Czech fugitive Radovan Krejcir, of course, is expected to bring an urgent court application in the North Gauteng High Court, asking it to grant him access to specified medical attention. He also wants his notebooks and documents that were confiscated returned and to be sealed to prevent third parties from going through them. Then in Kimberley, judgment, of course, expected in the fraud, corruption and money laundering case against John Block, Alvin Burtis and Christo Scott. That one continues in the High Court in the Northern Cape this morning. Well, time for us to take a quick break. You're watching Newsroom. We'll be back right after this.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
Across the globe, locally, and on the entire continent. Every second, every minute, and every hour. There's always a breaking story. We commit to giving you the most important, significant, and interesting news. That's why it is not a surprise that more Africans are tuning to SABC News to find out what is happening. Because when news break, we've got you covered. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Welcome back. You're still watching Newsroom. Now, in the future, when South Africa is left in the dark because of load shedding, there will be one building that's guaranteed to have power, and that'll be the Chamber of Mines in downtown Johannesburg. Why, would you ask? Well, because of a 100-kilowatt platinum fuel cell power plant project that has been installed at the offices of the Chamber of Mines. This energy project has shown fuel cell technology holds tremendous promise for the supply of, well, and distribution, really, of clean energy in South Africa. Now, the project recently won the South African National Energy Association and the South African National Energy Development Institute for 2015's Project Award. And here to tell us a little bit more, well, we are joined in studio today by the CEO of Mitochondria Energies, Mr. Mashudu Ramano. Very good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, and I'm grateful to be here.
Congratulations on all the awards that you're getting for this fantastic project. But tell us, what is fuel cell technology?
Well, I think to start off with, Mitochondria has a great story to tell and a great impact that we believe and contribution that we believe we will be able to make to South Africa. The fuel cell technology is a 200-year-old energy generation technology, which was perfected during the space program in the US when they were looking for a technology to generate energy and water in space. So it's in simple terms, it is a generation technology that takes gas, hydrogen, and converts that hydrogen into energy, water, and heat. And that is the technology that we have installed at the Chamber of Mines offices in downtown Johannesburg.
Why are we in South Africa then not at the forefront of this, of developing this type of fuel cell technology?
Well, let's put it this way. If you look at the geography of production around the world, most of the technologies either originate in Silicon Valley in the West, and they migrate and they pick up all our minerals in Africa, and they go and manufacture in the East, and they bring them back here. What we are now saying as mitochondria is that South Africa needs to own this new emerging technology, because in that technology, there is platinum in it. And platinum is South Africa's strategic and greatest resource, which we believe should be utilized to create what I call the platinum valley on the one side, leading up to the platinum economy. So we need to own the manufacture and the beneficiation of this strategic mineral. An
end-to-end solution, really, that's what we should be looking at. Looking at this picture, this is obviously one of the, how this project really works fit together. Tell us about, at the Chamber of Mines, how the project really works and how does it tap into your existing infrastructure?
So effectively, somewhere towards the right-hand side of that picture that we see here, there is a connection to gas, which comes from Egoli gas. And then on this side, on the left-hand side, there is a connection to water, which is utilized in the process. And behind this, there is a connection to the actual distribution network that feeds power into the Chamber of Mines. And currently, we feed something like 80 megawatts of 80 kilowatts, 80 kilowatts of fuel cell generated electricity, and it helps the chamber to meet its peak demand, and also during times when there is outages, the Chamber of Mines offices are able to continue having electricity uninterruptedly.
Scale is the one thing that immediately comes to mind. Can you sort of extrapolate this into a bigger project that will serve the countries or help to serve the country's energy challenges going forward?
So the beauty about the newer energy technologies that are emerging is that they are scalable, is that they are distributed, is that you can make with the fuel cells, you can start from very small consumer electronic type products and scale up all the way to multi-megawatts. For instance, we're talking about putting a 1.8 megawatts unit at the Impala Platinum Refinery in Springs, and we can do multi-megawatt scale. So that is the beauty of these emerging technologies, and that's where our name mitochondria comes from. Mitochondria, if you know, is a 2 billion year old bacteria, which is a power plant in each and every human cell and plant cells. And each and every one of our cells, there's about 50 to 100 trillion cells that we have in our bodies, have their own little power generation plant. And those power generation plants are networked and connected to each other. So the future, we predict, is going to be distributed, decentralized, as well as networked on-site generation.
Tell us about, let's talk about the award quickly. You talk about decentralized energy for the future of South Africa. How has this award and the work that you do highlighted the importance of the movement towards that?
Well, I think it was a great significant confidence that was shown to this new emerging fledgling company called Mitochondria, that we were awarded for what SANEA, the South African National Energy Association, and SANEDI calls for leadership, for innovation, for initiative, as well as for impact and international recognition. So that we are redefining, in a sense, the energy landscape, not only here, but in Africa and the rest of the world.
How does this tap into the idea of green, clean energy, and how is this going to better our lives, not just today, but 50 years from today?
So my prediction is that beyond 2050, gas is going to be the dominant energy fuel.
Is this hydrogen
This is hydrogen.
Hydrogen gas.
Yeah, if you look at how the transition inside the hydrocarbon energy sector, it is moved from solid, which is coal, to liquid, which is oil, to now we are entering the gas age, which is methane. And in that transition, the content of hydrogen increases. So we have less carbon in methane and in natural gas. So the energy system is transitioning towards a hydrogen future. Whether it will be soon enough, that's everybody's
that remains to be seen. Now, in a country that's dry like South Africa, the byproduct of this process of hydrogen is water. Is that accurate?
That is absolutely correct.
Can we kill two birds with one stone and solve the energy and the water crisis in South Africa?
Well, in fact, we will be solving a number of problems in South Africa with the fuel cell technology. We will be generating energy. We will be creating a new industry in South Africa, which is based on fuel cells. I call it the Platinum Valley. We will be mitigating climate change, reducing NOxes and SOxes in our energy generation system. We will be creating jobs. The studies that have been done indicate that by 2040, this new emerging industry will create 500,000 jobs into the South African economy. So it's more than just two birds. It's a significant contribution that this new emerging technology will make to South Africa and to the rest of the continent.
Well, it's an exciting development, and I hope the award that you've won gets everyone on side and understand what the hydrogen technology and fuel cell technology that you're working with can do for the country. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. Much appreciated.
That's the CEO of Mitochondria Energy, Mr. Mashudu Romano, and it's only good news that he brings us here today. Killing two birds with one stone. He even says more than that. So let's hope it's a successful project that goes from strength to strength. Now we move on. Police are investigating a shooting at Cape Town Station in the city's central business district. Yesterday, that left one person dead. The city of Cape Town says two men dressed completely in black were spotted behaving suspiciously. They were followed on CCTV cameras, and when they were approached by guards, they started shooting randomly before one turned the gun on himself on one of the platforms there. Police are still searching for a second suspect who fled the scene shortly after the incident. It's caused quite a lot of consternation in and around Cape Town. Of course, let's take a look at some of the tweets, what people have been saying about this very concerning development in Cape Town. Richard Kemp says, unusual development. Cape Town shooting. Two men dressed in burqas shoot at a crowd in a railway station. No hits, one kills himself. Buanajimbi says, gunman commits suicide in Cape Town after shooting at railway commuters. One can only be happy that no one was hurt. Masibulelo Nono says, yesterday, Muslim guy shot several times in public place, Cape Town railway station, but no one get injured after he shoot himself. Well, Masibulelo, we can't say it's a Muslim guy. It's somebody in Muslim attire that was found to be shooting randomly at Cape Town Station. One must always be very wary of the portioning blame because of the way people look or the way that they dress. In this instance, they were wearing burqas, but whether it is an extremist attack, that remains to be seen. Now, let's take a look at what's happening on Newsroom's Facebook page today. The Limpopo provincial government is assessing the extent of damage caused by veld fires in the Waterberg district. Then, the International Criminal Court says South Africa will still be accountable for not handing over Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir, even if it decides to remove its signature from the court. And Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton won unexpected support from chief rival Bernie Sanders yesterday for a use of a private email server as U.S. Secretary of State, helping to defuse an issue that has overshadowed her campaign in recent times. Well, time for us to take another break. You're watching Newsroom right here on SABC News. Welcome back. You're still with Newsroom now. They are often seen as outlaws, rebels, dangerous, reckless, and most times demonized. These are some of the negative connotations generally associated with biker gangs. In the 40s and 50s and even the 60s, motorcyclists were considered the outlaws of the road. They belonged to different bike gangs and communally engaged in criminal activities such as drug trafficking, extortion, and so forth. But that image that portrays bikers in a negative light is changing. One of the events that bring out the softer side of bikers and portray them as more caring and socially acceptable group is the annual Toy Run motorcycle charity event. Now this year it'll take place on the 29th of November, hosted by the Italian Motorcycle Owners Club. The 33rd Toy Run aims to do two things. One, to improve the image of bikers in communities and eliminate the negative connotations associated with them. And two, to distribute toys to underprivileged children. Now, to tell us more on the event and to touch base on biker gangs and the image, we have Michael Clark, who's the public relations representative for the Toy Run. He's in our Cape Town studios with a big cuddly bear. Very good morning, Michael. Thank you for joining us. Can you introduce your friend to us, please?
Even I can, yes, indeed. This is our mascot for the Toy Run this year. Well, in fact, he's my mascot every year. But more importantly, his name's Fred, and I bring him around to these TV interviews because he makes me look thin. Most people don't know who's the speaker and who's the bear.
That's fantastic. Now, Michael, before we go into the Toy Run and this year's charity event, which is a fantastic annual event, I want to talk to you a little bit about the image about bikers, motorcyclists, motorcycle gangs, people who wear the cut-off denim jacket with the name of their group on the back. Is that image changing?
Yemen, well, no, it isn't really. I think it's a battle that we have as bikers or motorcyclists. You see, it's a very complicated exercise because are you a biker or are you a motorcyclist? And then it's a fine line between biker gangs and biker clubs. And that also image will change throughout the world. We have biker gangs right across the world, as you know, and we have one or two in South Africa as well. But are they biker gangs or are they biker clubs? And it's a difficult one. And I think the battle there for bikers in general, if you can call it a battle, I think it's more a question of just ensuring that our image is constantly promoted in the country in terms of a growing motorcyclist, by the way. The population of bikers is growing. So we, as a Toy Run, was originally started actually to kind of defend ourselves a little bit. And the first goal of the Toy Run was not actually so much in giving toys to the underprivileged, but actually, in fact, to do that, but most importantly, promote the image of bikers. So that really was the key to and the start, in fact, 33 years ago, when the Italian Motorcycle Owners Club here in Cape Town started to collect toys.
So who are the bikers today then, Michael? Is it, it's not the Hells Angels of folklore, is it more middle-aged men who's just gotten past the midlife crisis?
Well, I think that's the beauty of biking, isn't it? It's a bit of everything, really. We've got people starting today on 125 bikes from China, which entry-level machines, and we've got bikes that, well, today you can go and buy yourself a new Kawasaki in the showroom for 356,000 Rand. So you could be anywhere in between all that. You could also be an enthusiast. You could be a biker because you enjoy old motorcycles or restoration of bikes, or you see it as a way of camaraderie, of getting together with your friends. There's many reasons for being a biker, and I think there's all types. So the answer to that question is I think it includes everybody. I, for one, can only speak on behalf of my club. I got involved because I love Italian motorcycles, and that has always been my passion. And as it happened, the Italian Motorcycle Owners Club started the Toy Run. But certainly, you know, there are many other clubs which have a darker side to them, there's no doubt about it. And I was just reading the other day, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, his club, he's got a club that he writes over there called, I think they're called the Black Wolves, the Night Wolves, Now, they're a fairly new club in Russia. They've got a terrible reputation, and they tried to do a run through Europe, and they were banned. Now, this went right across the world, and including our TV here in South Africa. So that immediately, damages our image once again, and so we sort of start all over again, because it's so important that, especially on a motorcycle, but you need people to love you, because you're very, very vulnerable, and if you get on the wrong side of the motors, you always come off second best.
Yeah, South Africans, we don't muck about in the traffic, I can tell you that. But let's quickly talk about the toy run this year. It's 29th of November this year. It's just over a month away. What are you hoping to achieve this year?
Yes, look, we're hoping to achieve some more growth in our toys this year. We collected around about, I'm always bad with figures being a biker, but let's say after my fingers and toes I run out of numbers, but something like about 26,000 toys just in the Western Cape alone. Throughout the country it runs up to the 70s and 80,000 toys. We need to grow that even because, I say this every year, but once you create this need, you're obliged to make sure that you satisfy it. Sadly, we have lots of children around the country, and not just in the Western Cape, that look to us every year for toys to bring a little happiness and joy around the festive period. So we're looking to grow that because the demand continues to grow, and so to do that, we try to look to do things differently every year, try and make things a little bit more exciting. So what we did last year was we moved the venue in the Western Cape from Maynardville to the William Herbert Sports Fields. We brought in some different bands this last year, which we'll be doing the same again. But we've also tried to keep the whole the sort of flavor of the day not too different, because people come along to the toy run because it's a place they feel comfortable at. It's a great place for a draw. And so we ensure that we keep some things there. And we always have Kurt Skoenrod of the Comedy Club here in Cape Town. He's been a wonderful supporter of our toy run for, I've given up how many years now. And we've got Stavro will be with us. He runs a great band called Tuxedo. They'll be with us again. But then we've also got some additional comedians, additional bands, and sometimes a few surprises.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for joining us. I'm not surprised that so many comedians are on motorbikes. I got quite a few mates who are comedians on motorbikes anyhow. I think it's a perfect match, to be honest. Thank you very much. Michael Clark, the public relations representative for the toy run that's taking place on the 29th of November next month. In and around Cape Town. That was live from our studios in Cape Town. Now, we stay with things Cape Town. The Cape Town International Jazz Festival is once again around the corner, and with an exciting all-star lineup. There's much anticipation for this world-class event. Next year's Cape Town International Jazz Festival is to deliver an exceptional and unforgettable live music experience. This was the first artist announcement for the festival, popularly known as Africa's grandest gathering. That will take place on 1st and 2nd of April 2016 in Cape Town, and will host more than 37,000 music-loving fanatics. Now, joining us today in studio is the CEO of ESP Africa, Mr. Billy Domingo. Good morning, Billy. Nice to have you with us again. Captain. And one of the star performers, tribute Birdie Mbweni, who we'll see her perform just in a moment. She came in a little bit earlier and recorded her absolutely amazing performance, I must tell you, my dear. Thank you very much for doing that to us this morning. But Billy, let's start with the business, as you do. You've grown this event tremendously over the last couple of decades. What's going to be different, and what's going to be fun, and what's going to be outstanding next year?
Yeah, I think operative, it takes a village to raise a child. I think we grew it. There's a lot of people we both know.
Yeah.
I think what's done, every year we get complaints or praises, and we take it into account and bring it together. This year I focus a lot on African diaspora. So to me, other than tribute Birdie, let me get that right, Amadou Mariam from Mali, unbelievable act.
Yeah.
Angie Son, obviously, the normals. I think it's going to be a lot more fun because we included a Sunday in the township called Ikapa Jazz. So it's going to be a long week of being there. I think it's going to be exciting.
Birdie, I love the name, being a golfer, I'm always looking out for birdies.
Boy.
That's the one thing. But tell me, my dear, what does it mean for you to perform at this world-class festival? Maybe Maybe I can get Johan to play us a little bit of backing sound of your performance a little bit earlier while we talk about it. But what does it mean?
It's very exciting for me, and I mean it's called Africa's Grandest Gathering. It's the 4th biggest stage in the world, and 6 months into the release of my debut album, and I get to be booked for that stage. It's me showcasing my art and my music to the world, really, because people from the world over come for the jazz. So yeah, very excited about it.
Well, you've got such a wonderful sound. Let's just listen to it for 30 seconds.
Omakumete, ayomakumete, omakumete, yetulumakumete lomthwalo wakhe, yetulumakumete lomthwalo wakhe, ngoba izolo bakubona luhamba naye, izolo bakubona luhamba naye, yo way yo way
We have a lot of performers here every week, and I tell you now, this is the best sound that I've heard in the 3 years almost that we're on air. You have absolutely a terrific, sweet sound. What do you call it?
This is Afro Soul. I call it Afro Soul.
Afro Soul?
Yeah, but music is music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to play that. We're going to play the entire. We shot a music video with it a little bit earlier, and it's so amazing. But Billy, I want to ask you, how do you decide on who comes to the Cape Town Jazz Festival? Now, what's the criteria?
It's kind of blessed. I didn't know Birdie was going to be on. This is an incredible story. I went to Moshito because taking over Swiss for Rekha to find and I went and listened to the worst sound I've ever heard in any theatre. She was there. They delayed it for half an hour to get it right. I nearly left. Now, as festival director, I was looking for talent, and I stayed back, and I gave her a standing ovation. I booked her immediately. This lady, after all 46 years of show business, she stunned me, and I think that's what we've got to do. We've got to, as festival promoters, go and find talent. This is going to go far. I'm so proud that we're here together today. It's amazing. Yeah.
No, I've no doubt about that. I had a goosebump moment when I walked into the studio and she was busy doing this recording. It was just amazing. All the guys here were just, you could feel it. It's that sweet. It's that close to home for us. But Africa's Grandest Gathering, it's a massive event. It's almost a logistical nightmare, I would think, for yourself, and you've got a massive team now that puts it together. But year after year, what are the main challenges that come up that you feel that you have to overcome?
Blessed that it's capacity. We have been sold out. We've sold out 98% of our corporates already. It's just getting a venue that has the capacity and also being able to service to the extent that we have in the professionalism that hopefully we have here every year.
Now, you're going to be at Africa's Grandest Gathering. There's no doubt that will be a platform that's just going to send you into orbit. I've no doubt about that. But who are the people that you look up to, the artists that you've looked up to in your time going into
I
Cape
look
Town
up
Jazz?
to artists such as Dorothy Masuka, hence I did Umakumete as a tribute to her.
Yes.
And artists like Jill Scott internationally, because she writes so honestly and so openly, and yeah, so many other African artists, your Angelique Kidjo, your Kajanine, your Hugh Masekela, and so many other beautiful artists and I think that's the beauty of being an artist in this era. There's so many great artists to look back and refer back to.
Well, you're going to be right up there with those greats. I've got no doubt about that. But Billy, in conclusion, this year's festival, what are the other highlights? People should go there to just go and watch Birdie. I feel that's what I'm going to go and do. But tell us, what are the highlights that people should be on the lookout for?
As an artist, SWV, we've already said to me. I brought my Fikizola back again, but with Seput Solo this time, so it's going to be insane. It's going to be internationally. We have only 20 artists announced this year, 20 more to come. But I think what's going to be is that we extended the festival by a day. That's one of the highlights. And we've improved on what we did the year and the year before. You should know because you were here from the inception, so you've seen the progress.
Yeah, I was a young journo that done a lot of well, inserts and that sort of thing at the festival, and I was just, you know, from when you went North Sea, it was just an amazing
You've seen the growth
phase over the 15 years or so throughout. But all the best with the festival, and Birdie, I know you're going to kill it. I absolutely see it.
The plan is to enjoy myself, so I'm definitely going to do
Well, everyone else is going to enjoy themselves with you. We're going to have a look at that video in a short little bit. But let's first say thank you guys for coming in.
Pleasure. Thank you.
And all the best with the festival, Billy. But let's get a quick weather update with Tsietse Monari. After that, hopefully we'll have time to watch that music video in full.
Welcome from the weather desk. Now, this is what you need to look out for. A couple of weather headlines, possibilities of high fire danger, severe thunderstorms, and also high temperatures over Limpopo province. And now let's take a quick look at that weather details. It looks like we're expecting rain all the way into the central parts, which is good news. We do need that rain, particularly over the central regions, the places that have been affected by those failed fires, and we're expecting again showers towards the Western Cape province, towards KwaZulu-Natal, and up north out towards Botswana, going all the way into the southern part of Angola. Partly cloudy skies are expected for the Western Cape province, clear conditions though for Namibia, and then up to 80% chance of rain for the Eastern Cape province, KwaZulu-Natal, and into Gauteng. There's widespread showers, up to 60% chance of rain that is expected there. Yes, it's looking great, so let's hope the rainfall actually comes. Now, the warning says issued out by the South African Weather Service, possibilities of fell fires. I did mention those. Basically in the same area where we're expecting rainy weather. And because of the hot temperatures that you're expecting, there are possibilities of thunderstorms developing over the Free State province, some parts of the Northern Cape, as well as over the Northwest province are quite high. So please do be extra careful if you're going to be over the Northwest province, as well as here in Gauteng. You should look out for possibilities of thunder showers. Temperatures for Gauteng between 25 and 30 degrees, okay? So it's getting a lot cooler. Situation's changing quite a bit. 32 towards Mbombela, high temperatures for Mafikeng, as well as over Kimberley. And towards the southwestern parts, you will see that it cools down quite a bit as temperatures for Sutherland drops to 18 degrees. Cape Town is also just around 18. Those partly cloudy skies are expected for much of the Northern Cape, as well as over some parts of Namibia. Speaking of Namibia, this is the situation there. Towards the southern regions, cool weather for Oranjemund, Luderitz, but then gets warmer as you move more inland and further towards the northern parts. You'll see temperatures for Oshakati at the 37 degrees, very close to 40. Hot weather for Maun, Francistown, as well as over Hukunzi. And if you're going to be in a small town called Kanye, do expect temperatures to be just around 38 degrees. Yeah, those hot conditions still persisting throughout Botswana, as well as over some parts of Zimbabwe. Just have a look at the western coast, western side, Victoria 39 degrees, Kariba also 39. But none of those compared to what we're seeing in Tete. 41 degrees is the maximum temperatures there. And it's been like this for a couple of days now. So the heat wave really impacting over Zimbabwe. But as you move further towards the gas mines over Nampula as well as over Pemba, temperatures there just into the lower 30s, looking a lot better. And along the coastal parts again, sunny conditions are expected there, so good time for holidaying along those parts. Not so much for Maputo though, rainy weather is expected there, but temperatures are expected just around 29 degrees, might even touch on into 30, but we'll just have to wait and see. That's why I'll leave it for the weather. For now, do stay tuned, there'll be more later.
There will be more a little bit later, no doubt. The rain has finally come.
Yeah.
Is that the good news? Summer is here for northern parts of southern Africa?
Yeah, hopefully. Well, summer has sort of bypassed spring. I mean, we had about 5 days of spring and then it was just hot all around.
Yeah.
But yeah, looks like the summer's coming. As soon as these thunderstorms start kicking in and we see some lightning and some, short bursts of rainfall, then we'll start jumping into the summer.
It's still a little bit brown now for this time of the year. If we look around us, you expect things to just green up in a week or two after this?
No, it might take a bit of a while. Remember, we were hit by really hot conditions and the drought also continues. So over the last 2 seasons, the rains have been quite weak. So it's not going to change overnight. We need a lot more.
Well, it continues to be dry, but let us let us play into the top or the end of the hour with something that was a little bit special this morning at Tsietse Monare. I can tell you this lady is going to go very far in the music business. Her name is Tribute Birdie Mboweni. She is a headliner at the Cape Town International Jazz Festival a little bit later. Amazing. It's Magumede.
Yethulo magumede lomthwalo wakhe, yethulo magumede lomthwalo wakhe, isolo bakuboni luhamba naye, isolo bakuboni luhamba naye. Yo way, 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 ay, yo way, yeah. Yo way, yeah. Yo. Oh makumete, ayo makumete, oh makumete, yethulo makumete lomthwalo wakhe, yethulo makumete lomthwalo wakhe, ngoba isolo bakuboni luhamba naye, isolo bakuboni luhamba naye. Yo way, yo way, yeah. Yo way, yeah. Yo way, yeah. Oh makumete, ayo makumete, oh makumete. Mam Dorothy Masuka, thank you for the beautiful music from the bottom of our hearts. Methulum twalo makumete, neti sumakumete. Methulum twalo makumete, neti sumakumetule. Methulum twalo makumete, neti sabo. Methulum twalo.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Stand by. All systems ready. Three, two, one.
Looking for social issues?
It is not our intention to give condoms to 10-year-old children.
We're here to assist you. Looking for religious issues?
The point is not for the church to try and prove whether this is the fact.
So we want accountability. Is there a system of governance in your churches?
Political issues.
Barack Obama said Africa should stop looking to the outside for salvation and focus on someone else being at fault for the problems of the continent.
economic issues.
The young mothers, single mothers that's buying property now.
Or just looking to air your views.
Here are some of your views on social media.
Look no further, as Newsroom has all the informative information you need. Weekdays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
It's 10:00 hours Central African time on this Wednesday, the 14th of October 2015. This is Newsroom. We are broadcasting live from our Auckland Park studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. Jumbo Africa, you have to stay with us as we bring you news from here and around the globe. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be your host until 12. But first, let's take a look at all your headlines. NUMSA hopes to hit the private and public sectors where it hurts the most as it embarks on an anti-corruption march. Czech fugitive Radovan Kriča is to approach the High Court in Pretoria asking it to grant him access to specified medical attention. Israel gives police powers to seal off parts of East Jerusalem in response to recent knife attacks. Those are all your news headlines, but first, Kendall Makamate is standing by with your sports news. Good morning.
Good morning, Elvis, and good morning to everybody at home. Thank you very much. Let's do a quick sneak peek into what we've got in store for you in the sports later today. Bafana finished their whirlwind Central American tour with a 1-1 draw with Honduras. And the Proteas, with one ODI win under their belt, already take to the field today against under-pressure host India in the second of their 5-match ODI series. Just 3 days away from D-Day as the Springboks and the Dragons of Wales build up a head of steam to the Rugby World Cup quarter-final clash. That, in a nutshell, is exactly what you can expect in terms of the sports later on in this bulletin. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. That's all your sports news coming up in a short while, but right now, let's take a look at your top story. It's day 2 of the trifecta judgment. Yesterday, a late politician came under scathing attack in the high-profile fraud trial in the Northern Cape High Court in Kimberley. Yolanda Botha, who died in December last year, was accused in the fraud and corruption trial involving Northern Cape ANC chairperson John Block. Delivering a judgment, Judge Matebe Futswani has said that Botha was drifting towards becoming a law unto herself. Block and his co-accused, the ANC Provincial Secretary Alvin Botha, are accused of using their political muscle to secure government tenders for the trifecta group of companies between 2006 and 2009. Now, for the latest, SABC's Margaret Motibi is at the Northern Cape High Court and she joins us now. Margaret, a very good morning to you. And can you tell us what can we expect on day 2 of this very high-profile case?
Good morning. Well, basically, like you rightfully said, we're just outside the Kimberley High Court. What's going to happen today is that it's the second day in terms of the judgment in a case that involves the ANC chairperson, John Block, and also MEC Alvin Botha and the businessman that you mentioned, Christos Scholz. What has happened is that yesterday the judge started in terms of handing down her judgment in this particular case that has taken more than 2 years. So we're seeing the case coming to an end, but there are a lot of elements that were in this particular case. You'd remember that there was a time when the accused had asked this particular judge to recuse herself because they were accusing her of not being biased and to say that she's not experienced enough to handle a case of this magnitude. And what is at the center of this particular case is the fact that they say that Yolanda Botha, who passed away last year due to cancer, was instrumental in terms of using her influence as the then head of Department for Social Development in getting these tenders for different government offices. And they say that they were done at exorbitant prices. And also the measurements in terms of the office space, they say there was something dubious in terms of that. So the NPA has been at pains to try and prove to Judge Patswani that there was a lot of colluding between the politicians, the businessmen, and the late Yolanda. And there was also a gentleman who also passed away. He was a businessman, Sarah Bruda. So he was the BEE partner of Scholz. And basically they say that he was the link between the businessmen and the politicians. And you rightfully mentioned that Judge Patswana yesterday, in part of the judgment that she read out, she was saying that the late Member of Parliament, Yolanda Bugota, was kind of like becoming a law unto herself, because there were questions about tender processes where they say that tender processes were not followed, they were flawed, there were a lot of questions where there were payments done by the businessmen to her, Yolanda, where she was able to renovate her house here in Kimberley. And there was also a payment into the renovation of the guest house of John Blogg. And this particular case is not the end for the ANC chairperson. This is just one of the many cases where he needs to answer to some of the allegations that he faces. After this case is concluded, he will then be moving on to the water purification case that involves the Department of Health provincially and also the local Sol Plaatje municipality, where it is alleged that he and another businessman, he used his political muscle rather, and then they colluded to buy this particular water purification product that is not being used in the province. So this is just the beginning of other cases that are going to be unfolding in the near future. Back to you.
Now, it is day 2, and 2 days have been set aside for judgment. Are we likely to see the 3-year trial coming to an end today?
Well, we're all hoping that today will be the last day, but from what I understand, Judge Patswana is reading, her judgment is 120 pages long. And by yesterday afternoon, we understand that she was not even halfway through. So we wait and hope that she will be reading a bit faster than she was yesterday, because we understand that she's only on page 35 of the 102 pages long judgment. So we'll just have to wait until 4 o'clock and find out how far we are in terms of her judgment today, and whether they will then request that we come back again tomorrow and that she wraps up what she started yesterday.
A little later in the program, Margaret, we'll come back to you to give us an update. That's our reporter, Margaret Motibi, in Kimberley. We have to keep you updated on that story. It's unfolding as we speak. Now, trade union NUMSA has promised to hit private and public sectors where it hurts the most when it embarks on today's march against corruption and job losses. NUMSA's Deputy General Secretary, Carl Kluter, says they are expecting thousands of people to take part in the march in central Johannesburg today. He added that they will be demanding the strengthening of anti-corruption laws and the offices of the Public Protector and the Auditor General. The union has urged workers in other parts of the country to stay away from work in solidarity with the marchers. NUMSA is demanding that the National Treasury make organs of state comply with legislation to procure local goods and services. The union will be handing over its memorandum of demands to the Gauteng Legislature, the Reserve Bank and the Chamber of Mines. Now, the trade union NUMSA says it has promised to hit private and public sectors where it hurts the most with today's march in Johannesburg against corruption and job losses. Now, they will hand over that memorandum of demands to the Gauteng Legislature, as we indicated, the Reserve Bank and the Chamber of Mines.
South Africa, from where we stand, is in a vicious grip of worsening unemployment, retrenchments, deepening inequality and poverty amidst the political and ideological fog of a good story to tell that continues to be punted by the African National Congress, who, in our view, we think has lost its revolutionary credentials despite all its efforts to renew itself.
That's happening as we speak. And for more on that march, we are joined by our reporter Mbongeni Mutua. He's in the CBD of Johannesburg. Mbongeni, very good morning to you. How many people have pitched up for the march? Well, it seems like we've lost Mbongeni at the last minute there. We're going to try and get him back to find out what is happening, to give us an update. Meanwhile, the Mineral Resources Minister, Mosebenzi Zwane, has welcomed the deal to the strike in the coal mining industry that happened yesterday. The coal mine workers ended their 10-day strike yesterday, and the National Union of Mine Workers says their 30,000 members will return to work today. The lowest paid workers are to receive wage increases of between 5.5% and 7.5% over the next 2 years. The retirement age for workers was also extended from 60 to 63 years. Meanwhile, the Food and Allied Workers Union has raised concerns about the much talked about merger of SAB Miller with AB InBev. The union says it was not consulted.
We were not consulted about this transaction. As it is always the case, transactions that happens at the global level, there would be an in-principle agreement at that level, and these companies are bound by various antitrust laws to basically consult in various jurisdictions.
Now, NUMSA calls it the mother of all marches. And for more on that march in Johannesburg CBD, we're joined by our reporter Mbongeni Mutwa. Let's see if we got you now. Mbongeni, a very good morning to you. And can you tell us how many people have pitched for that march?
Well, the march is about to get underway. As you can see all around me, people have been arriving with buses, others with trains. We are told that there's people that are going to be coming from all over Gauteng. There's even buses that have been arranged to bring people from as far as Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and the Northwest Province. But right now I'm joined by the General Secretary of NUMSA, Mr. Ivan Jim, the organizer of this march, to tell us a bit more about what you can expect today. Mr. Jim, thank you very much for joining us. Today's march, are you happy with the turnout so far?
Well, workers are still arriving. We're starting. We're very happy with what we're seeing this morning. We think workers have stood down in Johannesburg. This is the mother of all battles against capitalism that breeds corruption, that hemorrhages jobs, but also we'll be using today to actually hand over to government memorandums that basically demand what frankly government must do to defend the jobs and to basically take measures against the 2 decades neoliberal policies it has implemented that are basically destroying and fracturing manufacturing, because unless we stand up and challenge these neoliberal policies, if these jobs are destroyed, they will never come back. Of course, the greed of capitalism, the looting around tenders, where SOEs are supposed to be putting together stimulus packages to create jobs, we are obviously seriously and negatively affected. And we're saying it's high time that those SOEs must pull together stimulus packages, create jobs, champion localization, and we're calling, for instance, on the EDD department to move swiftly to ban exportation of scrap, to impose export tax on scrap, so that we can be able to retain jobs here instead of exporting them.
Where does political parties come into this? I mean, we see COPE members are here, even their leader, Musiwa Likota, is here. How do they come into this?
Well, we're very firm. We have organized this march against corruption, and we are not going to chase away anybody who says he's taking a stand against corruption. Some people have decided that they are volunteering, they are going to join, and that's the stance we have taken on the 30th of March. Is a stance we're continuing with it today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, that's all we have for you right now. We are told the march will actually get underway at around 11. They will march up to Beyers Naudé Square, where they will hand over the first memorandum to government representatives. We're told that there's going to be people from National Treasury and so on. From there, they will move to the Chamber of Mines, hand over memorandum there, and then later move to the local office of the South African Reserve Bank, which is up the road from here. It's back to you.
Mbongeni, before you come back to me, I see that Terry Lakota has joined you just behind there. If you can maybe just ask him what are they doing at the march?
You're going to have to repeat that question. I didn't get it. It's a bit noisy here.
The leader of COPE is right behind you there. Could you maybe just chat to him and find out what he's doing at the march?
Well, all I can say is that about this march is that, in fact, NUMSA is expecting big numbers here, more than what we have at the moment. Of course, they won't put a figure to it. Also, it's worth noting that NUMSA has got this long-running feud with COSATU. You remember COSATU had their own march last week. They had a big march here in Johannesburg and also in other provinces. And someone was saying to me earlier, actually it's Patrick Craven, the former spokesperson of COSATU, was saying that you can see already the numbers here are bigger than the matches we've seen recently. So NUMSA is going to want to outdo COSATU with the numbers that we saw here. So whether that actually transpires, it remains to be seen because people are still arriving.
Let's try again, Mbongeni, if you can hear me. Terror Lakota is standing right behind you. I wonder if you could chat to him to find out what is he doing at the march.
Absolutely, I'll do that. Mr. Lakota, thank you very much for your time.
Yes.
Mr. Lakota, what are you doing at a NUMSA march?
This is not a NUMSA march. This is an anti-corruption march. The biggest enemy of the people, especially the poor people of our country today, is corruption. Echa imali yabo, abantu balambile abana zindlu, abantwana abana mfundo because ye corruption. Mzabalazo ke lo wabantu. And apho abantu belamba khona uzawundifumana apho. Uzawusifumana apho ba Congress of the People. Sayimisa silwele into yoba no. Siyayibona corruption iyangena African National Congress.
Well, it seems like corruption is becoming a new, what would you call it, rallying point or campaigning point. Because, I mean, just 2 weeks ago we had a similar march led by Zwelinzima Mavavi.
Yes.
I believe you may have been part of it. Now we have this one. Are we going to be seeing more of these marches and campaigns against corruption?
At the time when apartheid was the main problem of our people, we rallied the people of our country, big and small towns, big and small organizations, because that was the singular most serious enemy of the people of South Africa. Today, corruption is the biggest damage to the people of our country, the poor people in particular, the workers, students, everybody. As long as that is so, sizawudibanisa abantu sime ngezweli lodwa mayichithwe i-corruption. Therefore siyakhe ikusasa elihle kubo bonke abantu base-South Africa, kungatyi abambalwana. Ininzi labantu lingenanto elityayo, lingenandawo apho lihlala khona.
Thank you very much for your time.
My privilege, sir.
Well, we also understand that Zwelinzima Mavavi, like I mentioned earlier, he had his own anti-corruption march about 2 weeks ago where they marched to the Union Buildings in Pretoria. We are told that he's going to be giving an address here before the march gets underway. So there may be other politicians actually coming and joining this march. We'll just see how it turns out. But it's getting interesting.
Thank you.
Back to you.
Thank you, Mbongeni. That's our reporter in the CBD there, Mbongeni Mutwa, telling us what's happening with that march. Now, traffic has been disrupted outside Wits University on Empire Road due to protest action. Now, it's unclear at this stage what the protest is all about, but traffic is currently heavily backed up, we believe, and it's congested around most of the commuter routes in that area. Now, joining me now is Anine. Anine, can Twitter shed some light on what is happening there?
Definitely, Alvis. Well, we know that the NUMSA march isn't the only march taking place today in Johannesburg. The SRC of Wits have been up in arms about increased fees of 2016, and they are having their own march because of these increased fees today. We see tweets coming from the students who are there this morning. You can see there, like, Wits is literally shut down, is what students are tweeting this morning. We know the march was supposed to only start around 12 o'clock, but it seems like we've said groups have already started together for this march. The next tweet from Grace says, if you guys want to shut down Wits, at least tell us before I wasted my time coming in. Elvis, I can tell you that the SRC has been tweeting about this march, so maybe some of the students weren't informed, they didn't check Twitter, but yes, Sifosiso says avoid Jan Smithsville protest by Wits students, and we know it's because of the increased fees of 2016. Wits students are protesting about an upfront payment of 10,000 Rand, and us road students still continue not to say anything about the 40,000 Rand that they have to pay. And these are photos coming from the campus this morning, Elvis. There we see what the students are carrying with them as they are protesting against that increase in fees this morning.
Well, there you can see it, the hashtag capitalism must fall as well. There's coming more from the Wits students. Now, let's move on to more news now. The Czech fugitive Radovan Kriča will today bring an urgent court application in the High Court in Pretoria. He's asking the court to grant him access to specified medical attention. He also wants his notebooks and documents that correctional services officials confiscated to be sealed to prevent third parties from going through them. Correctional services earlier thwarted an apparent escape plans by the inmates, including Kriča, at the Sonderwater Correctional Centre outside Pretoria. Kriča reportedly wants his television set back, appropriate social interaction with other trial-awaiting prisoners. He also wants a report to determine the suitability of access to facilities, to have contact with his wife, children and families overseas. He also said to demand a report about the suitability of providing him with exercise equipment. In the court papers filed at the High Court in Pretoria, Kriča asked the court to rule that his medical information and details of the medical treatment not be published. Correctional services earlier foiled that apparent escape plan by the inmates, including Kriča, at the Sonderwater Correctional Centre outside Pretoria. Kriča and 5 co-accused have been convicted of attempted murder, kidnapping and drug dealing, and sentencing is due to start later this month. Abatembu King Buyelakaya Dalinyebo will apply to have his bail extended today after the application was postponed yesterday. The King's appeal against a 12-year jail sentence was turned down last week, and he intends to approach the Constitutional Court. King Dalinyebo says he will argue that if customary law had been taken into consideration, he would not have been convicted. Western Cape Police are looking for a second man following a shooting and suicide at the Cape Town train station yesterday. A woman became suspicious when she noticed 2 men dressed in black and wearing latex gloves. She notified security guards who approached the pair, and a shootout ensued.
The City Improvement District went and investigated. The first person on scene called further vehicles to back them up, because it did in fact look quite suspicious. At that stage, the 2 persons started to run. They opened fire on the CCID guards, who pursued them even while they were unarmed. At the entrance to the station, there was some disagreement between the 2. They ran inside, pursued by SABC at that stage, or SABC joined the incident, and 1 man managed to escape. The other one repeatedly tried to turn his fire on himself and eventually shot himself out on one of the platforms.
SAB Miller is continuing to make headlines. The global beer giant founded in South Africa has accepted in principle a new takeover bid from rival brewer Anheuser-Busch InBev. SAB Miller had rejected previous offers, claiming that they substantially undervalued the company. However, observers say the latest announcement is good news for shareholders.
Margins are getting narrowed. It means there'll be cost cutting. They'll be able to make great savings. They'll have much more market penetration all around the world. The synergy is fantastic.
Now, there are mixed reactions across the political spectrum over the government's intentions to review its membership of the International Criminal Court. Some political parties agree with the review of South Africa's membership to the ICC, while others don't.
We, as the majority party in Parliament, will stand ready to ensure that an appropriate legislative process is put in place to unsign South Africa from this ICC.
We are very, very concerned at this resolution, particularly as it demonstrates the country's move away from foreign policy based on human rights.
EFF does not support ICC because we feel that ICC is only dealing with African leaders. But for ANC to say they're going to rush and pull out, I think is not a calculated move, because we feel that each and every system that is not progressive, we must fight within.
We are not altogether comfortable, with the decision because of the way it has come about that South Africa has taken this decision.
By doing this, we're sending a very bad message to the rest of the world that we are moving away from human rights, something like Mr. Mbeki tried to do. The implications can be that our very good arguments for South Africa and Africa to be part of the Security Council of the United Nations, that is very damaging for that type of argument.
Meanwhile, a senior researcher in his Institute for Security Studies says should South Africa withdraw from the ICC, this will not have much of an implication here at home. However, the most important issue is about promoting and protecting human rights on the continent.
Should South Africa withdraw from the ICC, it doesn't have too many implications in terms of how South Africa could operate domestically. However, the real issue here is in terms of promoting and protecting human rights on the African continent. And a withdrawal by South Africa will be a reflection of not supporting an institution that is geared towards promoting those human rights.
The Israeli government has given police the power to seal off parts of East Jerusalem in response to a surge in attacks by Palestinians in recent days. It says the authorities can also demolish the homes of Palestinians who attack Israelis and revoke their right to live in Jerusalem. Israel's Security Cabinet approved the new measures at a late-night meeting after 3 Israelis were killed in Jerusalem yesterday. These were the latest in a series of attacks that have taken place in the city and elsewhere in Israel in recent weeks. The upsurge in violence follows increased tensions over visits to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says that he will travel to the region in the next few days to try and calm the situation.
Good morning and welcome back. My name is Kendall Mahamade and I've got your sports. Now, South Africa will be looking to continue with the momentum gained after their shock opening defeat to Japan when they face Wales in the Rugby World Cup quarter-final at Twickenham on Saturday the 17th of October. Let's take a look. Since losing their opening match 34-32 to the Japanese, the Springboks have beaten Samoa, Scotland and the USA, conceding just 1 try in the 3 matches to win Group B and set up a meeting with Warren Gatland's Welsh side.
Yeah, it's massive for us. If you look at Wales, physical direct team, so it's vital for us to keep continuity, keep momentum. What we want to take into the game is just the confidence of the last 3 weeks, and we expect another physical game, tough one, but one that we're excited about. We can't wait for the weekend.
Fast line speed, lots of numbers on their feet, putting sides under pressure with their defence. They kick lots of high balls, lots of cross-field contestables, which they chase down with huge intensity. So we'll have to deal with all of that, and obviously we'll leave no stone unturned in our preparation this week.
The Welsh Dragons are also looking forward to the clash.
The players have been absolutely fantastic, and you know, it's 1 week that we've got. It's knockout football. It's a quarter-final to look forward to, and look, if you had said to us 6 to 8 weeks ago, would you take a quarter-final against South Africa? Yeah, of course you would, and it's something that we're looking forward to from a coaching perspective and a playing perspective.
Yeah, we've had a lot of battles against them in the last 12, 18 months, so we know what they're all about. It's a case of us, making sure we're on the ball Saturday and ready to go.
The last time these two sides met was in November last year, when Wales broke a 15-year losing streak against the Boks, winning 12-6 in Cardiff. This time they'll meet at Twickenham. Kickoff is at 5 p.m. on Saturday, the 17th of October. Now, South Africa ended their trip to Central America with a 1-1 draw against Honduras at Olympico Metropolitan Stadium in San Pedro Sula. Bafana had a good start with Eric Matoho heading in a Jabulani showing corner 8 minutes into the match. The hosts equalized minutes later, though, through Eric Andino. Rubilio Castillo nearly put the home side in the lead at the half-hour mark, but Matoho managed to clear the danger. The match ended 1-1. Now let's see what you've got to say on Twitter with regards to the result that Bafana managed to get in Central America. Now, small match temperament, that's our comment hater. He reckons that why does Bafana perform exceptionally during friendlies, then worst football ever during qualifiers? And then we've got Mukete Sihlangu, why Honduras is trending but not Bafana? And then Neo Kukwano Tsipane reckons, retweeting Tabo Musamsia, who said, the kickoff Bafana match report kills me dead. Neither side could make an impression in a physical second period. And very interesting there. Can't quite read what that caption says, but I'm sure, hopefully you at home can see exactly what's happening there. Right, now moving on to to our very next story, which is a little chat that we're hoping to have with Shauna Hendricks. The pool stages at the Rugby World Cup are now over, and the injury count has been alarmingly high already. Spread across all teams, it's been a very few of the teams that have been spared. Already, 34 players have been replaced because of injury from the point when 30-man squads were finalised to the end of the pool stage. At the same stage in the 2011 Rugby World Cup, there had only been 16 withdrawals. Now, to talk to us about what the cause could be is Shauna Hendricks from the High Performance Centre at the University of Pretoria. Good morning, Shauna, and thank you very much for being patient with us and agreeing to come chat to us.
Hi, Kendall. Thanks so much for having me on the show.
Shauna, what do you make of the news that there have been that much more injury withdrawals from the teams in this World Cup than in previous World Cups?
I mean, I think it's a big statement to make. You know, there have been 21 injuries so far, but it really should be less about the number of injuries. And I think we can really only make statements like that once the IRB have done their injury surveillance study after the World Cup. You know, for instance, they look less on the actual number of injuries that take place and more on an injury rate. So, for instance, in 2011, there were 81 injuries that sort of took place over a 1,000-hour period. And I think that would be more important to take place. I think perhaps what's happened is that, you know, when you see players getting stretched off the field, it becomes quite an emotional context. And perhaps that's why the perception is that more injuries have taken place. But really, we can only make that assumption once the IRB have done their study at the end of the World Cup.
Thank you very much for bringing the science back into this conversation, Shauna, because that's exactly why we're talking to you. Because most recently, it was quite emotional when Paul O'Connell, the Irish captain, the talismanic captain, number 5, got stretchered off the field and then was ruled out of the rest of the World Cup. He called it quits on his international career. So that was a big moment for the Irish.
Yeah, it definitely was. I mean, you know, he's a great player. I think it's 108 caps, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and to see legends like that go down in that sort of way, it's never a great way to go down. You know, and I think there's so many different reasons for the injury. You know, you can't really put one causality on that. But either way, never nice to see a historic player like that go down.
What our viewers are looking at right now is a couple of the big hits that were being meted out in the match between France and Ireland. And Johnny Sexton, the Irish fly half, being stretched out, being walked off the field, seemed to have a rib injury, and he seems like he's not going to be playing in the next match either. One of the things that have been mentioned is that the big hits that are coming in fact, I just got some stats from a New Zealand publication looking at the same thing, is that one of the big hits that are coming in are part of that cause.
Yeah, you know, in the previous 3 World Cups, the injury surveillance studies that the IRB have done have said the major cause of the injuries is from tackles. You know, and there's a lot of reasons for that. That could be a tactical thing. It could be a technical aspect to why the tackles are, you know, such big hits. But also I think the game of rugby has changed. And you know, over the years, it's just become so much more explosive. But yeah, definitely a difference between Northern and Southern Hemisphere in terms of the tackles and the number of injuries therefrom as well.
Before I go on to the next point, does this affect you as a high-performance centre in terms of how you prepare your athletes, especially in the contact sports, knowing that the opponents are going to be that much more dynamic in terms of the contact area? Does this change and affect the way you prepare the athletes?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a huge part of it. Like I say, I think the game of rugby has changed, so you know, there's a lot more static moments, but then require the athletes to become a lot more explosive. So, for instance, the rule changes in the scrum. It's very static, but then very explosive. And with the seasons that the guys are playing, you know, that has a massive effect on the conditioning of the players that has to happen in order to ensure that they're able to sustain those high-intensity bats, the high-intensity hits, and as well as the, you know, long seasons that the clubs are playing, as well as then for national duty as well.
Right, and in closing, one of the things that we spoke about internally here was the fact that this Rugby World Cup is played mostly on converted soccer fields, which are going to be a lot harder. The ground is a lot more compact. The grass is a lot shorter, not as lush and as plush as the Northern Hemisphere teams might be used to, whereas the South African teams are used to playing on the high veld in the Free State, and it's hard and they're used to it, and that's why we don't have that high account in the Southern Hemisphere teams.
Yeah, I think, you know, there haven't been too many studies on looking at perhaps the football turf versus the rugby turf. Most of the studies look at the artificial turf versus the natural turf, and that has definitely shown to have an increased risk of injuries with the artificial turf. We saw a lot of that in the Women's Football World Cup recently. I don't know if that is the reason particularly for the increase or the number of injuries in this World Cup. there are so many different causalities for those injuries. So I wouldn't necessarily put it just down to the pitch and the surfaces.
Very good. Sean, I want to thank you very much. In fact, what you've done is you open up another conversation where we can do the scientific study as to the number of rugby hours played at the end of the World Cup and what the injury count was.
Yeah, that's definitely the way. Thanks so much, Kendall.
Now, that was Shauna Hendricks from the University of Pretoria High Performance Centre, trying to get us to get an understanding of what's happening with this high injury count that we've been reading about. Now, moving on to other sports news quickly. The Proteas and host India get their second one-day international underway earlier this morning in Indore. And on a roll, the Proteas have wrapped up the T20 series. They've got a win, and they've won the first of the 5 ODIs played. Now, they're looking to keep the pressure on India. Right now, we've got India at the crease. It's 24 for 1. Rahane is at the crease. Dhawan is at the crease. Rabada, 1 for 6. Doing very well. Let's take some live visuals.
Shikhar Dhawan, I think he's looking to hit the ball hard rather than just wait for the ball to come onto him. He's always gone after the bowling, and then that's something which he's done consistently for India. But on the surface, perhaps he just needs to hang back and then wait for it.
Will beat the fielder on this electric outfielder at Indore.
Great shot from Shikhar Dhawan. One thing we've seen so far on the surface is any bit of width has disappeared. So all the bowlers need to be nice and tight and off stump. Whenever they've offered a little bit of width outside, the batsmen have capitalised. We see there. Great shot. Hands through the ball. Enough power to get past A.B. de Villiers at a wide mid-off.
Well, there you have it. The Indians are trying to put up a bit of a fight, but Rabada is already on a roll. We'll be back with more news shortly. Stay tuned.
Well, time now to shift our focus. We're going to look at, well, vigilantism here in South Africa. Communities taking the law into their own hands. It's been steadily on the rise in South Africa over the last couple of years. In Khayelitsha in Cape Town alone, 18 mob killings have been reported in the last 7 months. Necklace murders, where a tyre doused in petrol is lit around the body of its victim. This is resurfaced as a punishment for alleged criminals. Often, the victims are falsely accused. Now, in a country where 49 murders are committed every day, at times the frustration of communities can be understood. But this can never be condoned. The rule of law needs to be respected if innocent lives are to be saved. Now, to help us unpack what seems to be a growing trend of vigilantism in the country, we're joined by Professor Kopano Ratele, who's an expert in violent masculinity. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben. Thank you.
What's your view? Why do we see this rise in vigilantism around the communities here in South Africa?
The failure is at multiple levels. One is of course, the loss of faith in the criminal justice system. People are taking the law into their own hands, and this is absolutely never, ever justifiable. But it basically means that people do not have lost trust, do not have enough adequate trust in the police systems. But also, one has to realize that there are other levels of the problem. The problem is if you have one person in a neighborhood who has no prospect, is unemployed, you have a criminal. But if you have a number of young men, young women, unemployed in a neighborhood, you already have the conditions for both gangsterism but also vigilantism.
What about the legacy problems? We see the rise of necklace killings again, which is very concerning in this sort of space that we're talking about. Would you say our violent past from the apartheid securities and the necklacing methods that used to be used in our communities, this resurfacing, is there any connection in your mind?
Theoretically, yes. I mean, conceptually, one has to start to think about that history, the history both of an oppressive regime, the apartheid security forces, but also the 1980s saw this unjustifiable, this horrible means of punishing people who were impimpies, and necklacing was called for by some for political leaders. So the after effects of apartheid trauma and now post-apartheid trauma have not been dealt with adequately. I think you still need a massive campaign to both increase levels of mental health services, but also, as I said, some of the problems are current. They are contemporary in the sense of if you have a large number of young men who are unemployed, you already have the conditions for taking out their frustrations in other ways, including, of course, some of these are not vigilantism. So you might have people taking refuge in alcohol, in drugs, but also in criminality. And clearly, vigilantism is part of that. Vigilantism is the flip side of criminality.
We've done a poll here. I just want to flip up this poll and just tell you what this poll says. There we have the poll. The question we ask is vigilantism justifiable? Now, 0% say yes, 40% say no, but 60%, Professor, say it depends. What does that say about the mentality that is out there in South Africa right now with regards to taking the law into your own hands?
Well, you know, this poll, of course, is indicative because there's all kinds of methodology. But it worries me that you have so many people thinking that there are conditions where vigilantism is justifiable. It is absolutely not justifiable. But hang on. The problem, as you said, is if people do not feel confident in the law bringing to justice the people who are committing crimes, who are selling drugs, they will take the law into their own hands. But this is never justifiable. So the solution to this, of course, is to strengthen the rule of law, strengthen both policing. But this is not kragdadigheid. This is not police coming in with full force. It's to understand what are the conditions that produces vigilantism, but also the conditions that bring about the huge body count, the criminality, the crime incidences, but also the other kinds of events such as road rage, because there is a lot of both aggression, of rage and violence in this country, as we saw with the police figures that were released a few weeks back.
You mentioned road rage, and I want to talk about the connection between all of these upsurges in violent incidents. Do you see this connection, and how do we break this cycle?
Well, there is a connection. Actually, there are multiple connections. One is every time you look at the visuals of the people who are involved in vigilantism, you start to see that most of the people would be young males, but also other kinds of males. So at the same time, the people who you see who are perpetrating violence against both men and women are males. So males in that particular case are both victims and perpetrators. And other kinds of incidences, incidences and forms of violence, men are overrepresented, and young men in particular. So there's a connection between the different forms of violence and a particular way of thinking about what it means to be masculine in this country. And it's a particular form of masculinity that we see in the country. And one of this is precisely this aggression, this rage, which might be due to a host of reasons that I've just indicated. Unemployment, poverty, lack of prospects, not being in school, drug taking, but also living in neighborhoods that are just unviable. Well,
Professor, we've run out of time, but this is a scenario that we're going to talk about hopefully for the weeks and months to come, because it continues to rear its ugly head here in South Africa. The fabric of our society really at risk a little bit. Hypermasculinity, you say, is at the heart of it then?
Yes, indeed.
I thank you for joining us. That's Professor Kopano Ratele, who talks about hypermasculinity, the key issue, the key problem that South Africa faces within the high levels of violence within our communities across the board. Time for us to take a break. When we come back, we look at Africa and what's happening on the continent. See you then.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
We ask tough questions.
Have you spoken to the president about resigning?
We ask hard questions.
What you're trying to do requires a lot of money and you don't have money.
We ask quick questions.
A quick one. You are aware that the PAC has now been banned by the IEC?
I'm aware.
And you are also aware that it has been banned because of you?
We ask good questions.
Are you an infiltrated organization?
We also ask funny questions.
Is it safe to eat your chicken?
All the questions, all the time, right here on Question Time, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m.
هسه سوريا خطر كثير. بدي ارجع دارنا على قريتنا عنخل لحد ما بطيق قريته. انا تركت ما ابي اذهب هسه الله اعرف شو فيها.
يلا يا عبد الله انزل انزل يا عبد الله انزل.
تليفون مهم كثير. بنتصل على سوري نشوف لين شو فيه. من حاجة خالتي بتقول لي إن عاد شوفي بنخل إذا آمن نرجع. يتلج سيريتين. أعطي سوريا بدي جريها وين في تخطيط طول العالم. مش بس إحنا لحالنا، عالم كثير كثير مش شوي. حاجة قرايبهم.
في كهرباء ومي كهرباء ومي في البلد.
لحد ما بخاف أولاد عمه ولا أخوته. يعني بس أحكي معهم أتذكرهم كلهم دارنا وإمامي كلهم. تليفون ليش مهم؟ بحاجة قرايبنا. نرجع سوريا من ورا مين؟ من ورا الموبايل.
That sad story. That was just a single story. A young Syrian boy in a refugee camp and how his life has been affected by the war in that country. Conflicts and instability in 5 countries alone on the planet have uprooted at least 4.5 million children. This, according to a recent statement by the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. Since the beginning of the year, more than 500,000 people have crossed the Mediterranean into Europe, and about 1/5 of those who've reached the shores are children. But the issue goes far beyond the borders of Europe. In Africa, millions of children are also fleeing conflicts and have to face many dangers on their journey to safety. Joining us now from Geneva in Switzerland via Skype is the United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund representative, Christophe Bouillerak. Very good morning to you. Thank you for joining us, Christophe.
Good morning, Elvis.
Christophe, let's start at the very beginning. What kind of physical and emotional impact are these conflicts having on these children that we see?
Yes, you might know that one child over 10 in the world, that are 230 million children, are living in an area affected by conflict. And out of those, 15 million children are directly affected by violence. What does it mean concretely? It means that children are injured in this conflict area. They are killed. they are maimed, they are kidnapped, some of them are abducted, some of them are tortured, and all of this as one common point. This is the traumatism. All these conflicts create trauma and deep, invisible wounds for children. And these children really require some assistance, all kinds of assistance, and including psychosocial assistance.
These children, the uprooted ones, they are often of a very young age. Do you believe they fully comprehend what is happening in their countries and why they're being uprooted, why they have to leave?
It depends. It depends. The situation varies, but most of the time the situation is not of their choosing. These are not the children who decide to flee, to go on the move. The youngest children who are on the move with their families have not decided to flee their homes. I will take the example of Syria. This conflict has been lasting for 5 years now. And when parents are and there is clearly a feeling of despair now among parents, among families, and some parents take the decision to go to a dangerous journey, and they take their children with them. Sometimes, of course, the children do not decide. All of them hope to survive and to find a place where they will be in a position to have a normal life. It's very important to understand that these families, we are facing now a huge crisis of refugees with millions of families. These families are not moving to get a slightly better life. No, they are living to survive.
What kind of protection do these children have in refugee camps, for instance, from smugglers, human traffickers, abuse and so forth? Are there any measure of protection?
Yes, there are. It's important, Elvis, to remind that not all of families, not all of children are in camps. For instance, if you take the example of Syria, most of the refugees who fled Syria into the neighboring countries such as Turkey, Jordan, Lebanon, 70% of them live outside of the camps. For instance, in Lebanon, you don't have any camps. So they might live within communities, with foster families, with some relatives sometimes. And in the camps, more specifically, there are some provisions to protect them. And for instance, there are some social workers who are taking care of them. And we are in these camps to provide protection to these children with our partners, with other actors, and also to provide education support. It's very important to understand that education, when they can continue their education, this offers them some level of protection. Because a child, even in a refugee camp, a child that is going to school will become less vulnerable. And education is not only math. Education gives a feeling of normalcy, of routine. And education is very important for these children, especially in camps, to find psychosocial, emotional stability in a very difficult environment.
Merci, Christophe. That is Christophe Bouillerac, who is the UN International Children's Emergency Fund representative. We're talking about 4.5 million children that are displaced right now because of conflict, not just on the African continent, but also elsewhere in the world. Very concerning, the numbers. Let's move on now and take a look at the front pages from around the continent. We'll start in Botswana. The Botswana Gazette reports in a bizarre incident. 3 Francistown Council employees' jobs hang in the balance after they were caught unlawfully using council vehicles for their personal gain. Then we move to Nigeria. The Daily Trust there reports that the Senate yesterday commenced screening of 10 ministerial nominees submitted by President Muhammadu Buhari. Then finally we go further north in Libya, where the Tripoli Post reports that the Libyan Prime Minister is in his two-day official visit to the neighboring country of Algeria with the aim to improve bilateral relations and cooperation between the two countries in all fields, and most so being bilateral security. Well, time for us now to wrap up the look at what's happening on the continent. Time for us to take a look at the continent's weather with Tsiatse Monara.
Health Talk, your show on health practice.
The people being empowered with knowledge so that they can change their behavior and reduce their risk of being sick.
How serious is stress at work?
If we don't address workplace stress, that negative stress, then it can lead to burnout and it can lead to depression.
How does absentees affect companies?
The one that's really problematic for employers is the one that is unscheduled.
How can companies organize their wellness program?
Health promotion mustn't just be a one-size-fits-all type of approach. It must be customized based on understanding of the unique needs of that particular organization.
For health tips that will help you to adopt healthy living with Dr. Sillo Mutawung on Health Talk every Saturday.
Looking for social issues?
It is not our intention to give condoms to 10-year-old children.
We're here to assist you. Looking for religious issues?
The point is not for the church to try and prove whether this is the fact.
So we want accountability. Is there a system of governance in your churches?
Political issues.
Barack Obama said Africa should stop looking to the outside for salvation and focus on someone else being at fault for the problems of the continent.
Economic issues.
The young mothers, single mothers, that's buying property now.
Or just looking to air your views.
Here are some of your views on social media.
Look no further, as Newsroom has all the informative information you need. Weekdays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News channel.
Your destiny is not determined by the township you come from.
The one place we will find movers and shakers is in the township. It's just that they're diamonds in the rough and some of them don't even know it.
Being young with no experience in business is a challenge that Bulelani took upon himself.
I was motivated by the prayer. I was motivated by the love.
To be a novice in business was tough, but experience made him a businessman of note.
It took me 7 years to make my first million. I've got all the scars to prove that I started with nothing.
A journey well traveled.
For me, that is the one major thing. The ability to touch other people's lives. Nothing goes beyond that.
Join your host Puleng Mulebati on Bopilong every Saturday at 5:30 p.m.
for victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
It's 1100 hours Central Africa time on this Wednesday, the 14th of October 2015. This is Newsroom. We are broadcasting live from Auckland Park Studios in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. Stay with us here in the final hour as we bring you the latest news from here and around the globe. I'm Elvis Preston, your host until 12, but first, let's take a look at all your headlines. The mother of all marches, the NUMSA anti-corruption march, gets underway. Czech fugitive Radovan Kriča is to approach the High Court in Pretoria, asking it to grant him access to specified medical attention. And Israel gives police powers to seal off parts of East Jerusalem in response to the recent night attacks. Those are some of your news stories coming up, but first, Kendall Makamate is standing by with your latest in sports.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elvis, and good morning to you as well as to all of our viewers who've just joined us. So we're going to take a sneak peek into what we've got in store for you in the sports later on today. First up, Bafana finished their whirlwind Central American tour. This they do with a 1-1 draw against Honduras. And the Proteas, with one ODI win under their belts, already take to the field today against under-pressure host India in the second of their 5-match ODI series. And just 3 days away from D-Day, as the Springboks and the Dragons of Wales build up ahead of steam to their Rugby World Cup quarter-final clash. And that, in a nutshell, is what you can expect in the Sports Bulletin at 11:30 today. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Let's now take a quick look at your top story for this hour. Hundreds of people have gathered at the Mary Fitzgerald Square in Johannesburg for an anti-corruption march led by the trade union NUMSA. The union is calling for the offices of the Public Protector and the Auditor General to be strengthened. About 2 weeks ago, the Anti-Corruption Coalition embarked on a nationwide strike against corruption, but NUMSA was prohibited to take part. NUMSA says this is a continuation of that march. Now, for the latest and an update on the march, on the NUMSA march, we go to our SABC economics reporter, Mbongeni Mutwa. Mbongeni, once again, good morning. Give us the latest on the march. What's happening now? Mbongeni, can you hear me? Well, it seems like we can't reach Mbongeni. We'll try and get Mbongeni back on the line to see if he can give us an update. Meanwhile, the Mineral Resources Minister, Mosebenzi Zwane, has welcomed the deal to the strike in the coal mining industry. The coal miners ended their 10-day strike yesterday, and the National Union of Mine Workers says their 30,000 members will return to work today. The lowest paid workers are to receive wage increases of between 5.5% and 7.5% over the next 2 years. The retirement age for workers was also extended from 60 to 63. The Food and Allied Workers Union has raised concerns about the much talked about merger of SAB Miller with AB InBev. Now, the union says it was not consulted.
We were not consulted about this transaction. as it is always the case, transactions that happens at the global level, there would be an in-principle agreement at that level, and these companies are bound by various antitrust laws to basically consult in various jurisdictions.
Let's now see if we can go back to Mbongeni for the latest on the NUMSA march. Mbongeni Mutwa, you are there. Please give us an update on the latest on that march.
Well, the latest is that it looks like this march is about to get underway now, anytime from now. The speeches have started. Of course, NUMSA leaders have started addressing the crowds, introducing various leaders from other organizations that are here, that are part of the march. People are still arriving. We are seeing groups coming down the street here. We assume it's the people who are coming by train. NUMSA has paid PRASA about 250,000 rands to bring people from different parts of Gauteng to this march for free. And those people, they're coming in groups, coming down from Park Station, and they're coming in smaller and smaller groups, but in waves. In any moment from now, we expect the march to get underway. Actually, I'm going to step out of the shot momentarily just to give you a view of the crowd and the speakers there on the track as they are addressing the people here, shouting slogans and so on. So basically, that's the latest at the moment. Of course, they are going to be marching up the road to Bears Nodia Square. It used to be called the Library Gardens. It's now called Bears Nodia Square. That's where they're going to hand over the first memorandum to government officials. We are told there's going to be people from National Treasury and other national departments who are going to be coming through to receive the memorandum. From there, they're going to march to the Chamber of Mines. After the Chamber of Mines, they're going to march to the Reserve Bank office, which is up the road from here. That's the latest for now.
Mbongeni, to what extent has this much disrupted the normal day-to-day activities of the people in the city centre, especially the business in and around that area?
Well, I can tell you that that is bound to happen. Whenever you have a march through the streets of Johannesburg, traffic gets disrupted. It gets backed up. That's inevitable. And it's worth also mentioning that lately, there seems to be a march through Joburg every second day. Yesterday there was a march that went through past the Chamber of Mines. Today there's a march. Last week there was the big Kosatu march. So we're seeing a lot of activity around the city, people marching for different things and so on and so on. So, and it's inevitable, traffic gets disrupted. Definitely.
Mbongeni, thank you so much for that update. Now, it could take a year for South Africa to pull out of the ICC. That's 12 months since South Africa has incorporated elements of the Rome Statute into local legislation. The Institute for Security Studies researcher Otila Magwanidze says that a domestic process would also have to be followed, which is geared towards enabling the government to withdraw.
In order for South Africa to withdraw, the first step would be to repeal the South African implementation of the Rome Statute Act from 2002. That requires a parliamentary process and it requires public consultation. After that act has been repealed, then South Africa would then again go back to Parliament with a motion to withdraw from the Rome Statute. Only after that motion has been accepted by Parliament would South Africa transmit this information to the UN Secretary General, indicating that it intends to withdraw from the Rome Statute. And after 12 months at least, after submitting that notice to the UN Secretary General, would they have withdrawn from the ICC.
South Africa's support for the Rome Statute has been under discussion since it failed to arrest the Sudanese President Omar al-Bashir. And the African National Congress believes its withdrawal will boost Pan-African unity. The Czech fugitive Radovan Kriča will now today bring an urgent court application in the High Court in Pretoria, asking the court to grant him access to specified medical attention. He also wants his notebooks and documents that the Correctional Services officials confiscated to be sealed to prevent third parties from going through them. Correctional Services earlier thwarted an apparent escape plan by the inmates, including Critcher, at the Zonderwater Correctional Centre outside Pretoria. Critcher reportedly wants his television set back, appropriate social interaction with other trial-awaiting prisoners, and a report to determine the suitability of access to facilities to have contact with his wife, children, and families overseas. He also demanded a report about the suitability of providing him with exercise equipment. In court papers filed at the High Court in Pretoria, Critcher asked the court to rule that his medical information and details of the medical treatment not to be published. Correctional Services earlier foiled an apparent escape plan by inmates, including Critcher, at the Zonderwater Correctional Centre outside Pretoria. Critcher and 5 co-accused have been convicted of attempted murder, kidnapping, and drug dealing, and sentencing is due to start later this month. The Abatembu King Buyelakaya Dalinyebo will apply to have his bail extended today after the application was postponed yesterday. The King's appeal against a 12-year jail sentence was turned down last week, and he intends to approach the Constitutional Court. King Dalinyebo says he will argue that if customary law had been taken into consideration, he would not have been convicted. Western Cape Police are looking for a second man following a shooting and suicide at the Cape Town train station yesterday. A woman became suspicious when she noticed 2 men dressed in women's clothes in black and wearing latex gloves. She notified security guards who approached the pair, and a shootout ensued.
The City Improvement District went and investigated. The first person on scene called further vehicles to back them up because it did in fact look quite suspicious. At that stage, the 2 persons started to run. They opened fire on the CCID guards who pursued them even while they were unarmed. At the entrance to the station, there was some disagreement between the 2. They ran inside, pursued by SABC at that stage, or SABC joined the incident. And 1 man managed to escape. The other one repeatedly tried to turn his fire on himself and eventually shot himself out on one of the platforms.
Well, much of the focus lately has been on the Syrian refugees traveling through Greece. Migrants continue to main the deadly Mediterranean Sea, crossing between Africa and Italy. As a reminder to lawmakers, a group of activists in Berlin brought their conversation of a packed refugee boat to the German capital.
It's an unfamiliar sight in a European capital. 120 people crammed into a refugee boat floating by the country's parliament.
Well, the idea is to give the people of the government and interested people the chance to try how it feels to be on a boat, on an unsafe boat like this, because the reason that the people come on this boat is that there's no legal way to come into Europe.
The vessel is an actual refugee boat that the volunteer organization Sea-Watch rescued off the Libyan coast 3 months ago. More than 2,600 people have died trying to cross the Mediterranean this year.
The boat was so completely overloaded that we had the clearance between the rubber and the water was about 10-15 centimeters.
The activists are demanding a stronger response from European leaders who have focused on deterring migrants and people smugglers instead of rescue operations or facilitating migration. Of course, even if migrants survive the journey, life in Europe is not easy.
There is no dignity here, really. They don't care where you come from, who you are a human being or animal, they don't care.
Khalid was granted refugee status in Italy, then came to Germany to improve his situation. But he remains in limbo, unable to work legally. Still, this country is the most popular destination for migrants because of its relatively friendly asylum policies. Germany has been one of the most welcoming countries in Europe since this latest refugee crisis began. But with public opinion here starting to shift, will German lawmakers continue to have that same attitude? Ira Spitzer, SABC News, Berlin.
The Israeli government has given police the power to seal off parts of East Jerusalem in response to a surge in attacks by Palestinians in recent days. It says the authorities can also demolish the homes of Palestinians who attack Israelis and revoke their right to live in Jerusalem. Israel's Security Cabinet approved the new measures at a late-night meeting after 3 Israelis were killed in Jerusalem yesterday. These were the latest in a series of attacks that have taken place in the city and elsewhere in Israel in recent weeks. The upsurge in violence follows increased tensions over visits to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. The U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry says that he will travel to the region in the next few days to try and calm the situation.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
Dudu had always been around boys from a very young age.
I've always been a girl who wants to intimidate boys. I want to do things that men can do. With education, it was the key. It was the first thing that I needed to do. I got an opportunity to go work overseas. Kim Burrell as well, where she trained me on my vocal exercises and whatever. And I thought, this is your passion and this is what you need to do.
Join me, Pule Mulebati, on your show about those who take on and conquer life's challenges every Saturday at 5:30.
Thank you to Elvis. Time now for us to move on and take a more regional look at what's happening around South Africa now. The South African Local Government Association, SALGA, in Limpopo will convene annual Provincial Members Assembly, PMA, in Polokwane from the 20th till the 21st of this month. The meeting also marks 15 years of democratic local government in South Africa, and an insightful presentation marking the local government journey will be presented. Special focus will be given to the planning of the 2016 local government elections. Now, SALGA Limpopo chairperson David Makhabe joins us from our studios in Polokwane this morning. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much, and good morning too.
What is the expectations from the 2015 SALGA two-day annual assembly?
Well, this is the biggest gathering of municipalities of our province, taking place on the 20th and the 21st of October in Polokwane local municipality at the Ranch Protea Hotel, with a special focus on advancing quality and municipal services beyond the 15 years of democratic and transforming local government in South Africa, but also with a special focus on our province, Limpopo.
You mentioned 15 years on now of SALGA. What have you achieved in the 15 years of a democratic SALGA?
Well, the focus will be is a review of how we have performed from 2000 until 2015, on how we have transformed the lives of our people in the province in terms of the provision of the basic services through many programs that we as SALGA in the province have initiated in partnership with our provincial government, particularly with the focus on the back to basic concepts, also on the financial management, but also with regard to how do we prepare the next local government elections in 2016, the post-transition plans as a whole.
Before we get to the election, I want to ask you about Limpopo's seen a lot of service delivery protests in recent times. Not just one area, but quite a few. The people are unhappy about service delivery. How are you going to, how are you addressing that in the province?
Well, as you review the 15 years of local government in the country as a whole, with focus in Limpopo, we are looking at how municipalities were able to interact with communities, but also what are the plans moving forward so that we're able to cap the issues that you have raised around service delivery and these protests. Mainly, we are foreseeing a relationship between our municipalities and mining communities because many of these protests are taking place in the mining communities.
Well, what are the main challenges that the communities say they need to be addressed?
Well, communities are raising issues around employment, but also how do they benefit in the mining development taking place in the province, but also how municipalities must fast-track issues around the provision of water. As you are aware that as a province, we were the mostly affected by the drought now, but also the challenge which has been affecting our municipalities is around how do we improve the capacity of our municipalities in spending the grants that come from the national government through what we call the municipal infrastructure grant, which has been a thorny issue in many of our municipalities in the province.
Often we see protests in Limpopo turn violent, and infrastructure that the communities themselves would use are often burnt down. In your discussions with the community, what's the solution to stop this self-harming practice?
Well, I'm sure what we are acknowledging is that the communities have the right to associate, but also to protest in terms of where they are not satisfied with what government is providing. But also what we are discouraging with communities is that this must not turn violence, because once it is turn violence, they are infringing and encroaching in the others' rights, which must be condemned, particularly as they vandalize infrastructure, which is limited, but also when they are looking for a third road, they ban schools or they ban libraries. So we all, in our community meeting with them, discourage all these sort of things. But I'm sure we are well aware that as a province, we are also affected by issues around the demarcation issues.
Yeah, absolutely. The demarcation issues, and another issue that that needs to be addressed is that of tariff collection, because you can only really provide services if you're able to collect the tariffs. How are you looking to address that?
Well, like I said, we are looking at the financial management of our municipalities in the province as a whole. Revenue enhancement as one of the key issues. How do we come with innovative ideas to ensure that municipalities are able to sustain themselves, unlike to depend on grant? But also we must acknowledge that many of our municipalities in the province are rural municipalities, which they can't able to generate revenue on their own. We need to come with new ideas, and that's why the focus will be on how do we sustain our municipalities moving beyond the 2016 local government elections, as we have celebrated 15 years review.
2016's elections is looming rather large. What's your outlook?
Well, the plans are very clear that the Municipal Demarcation Board has just finalized the demarcation of our municipalities in terms of amalgamating others. We are now working with our member municipalities in the province, in the wards. We're working with our traditional leaders in particular and the provincial government to ensure that we popularize the new demarcations at the new wards, so that our people are able to vote and exercise their democratic right in terms of the voting powers.
I thank you for joining us today. That's David Makgabe, who is the South African Local Government Association chairperson for the Limpopo province here in South Africa. And we talk about a whole range of issues that, well, the province is facing, not just now, but in the run-up to the election. That's the municipal election, of course, here in South Africa in 2016. Now we move our focus to Mpumalanga, and the public hospitals there, as well as other healthcare centers, are under pressure and face a numerous number of critical challenges. 2 years ago, the South African Human Rights Commission conducted an investigation on the state of hospitals in Mpumalanga province, and many were found in a state of disrepair. Health facilities face critical shortages of doctors, nurses, and other professional personnel and facilities to render proper services to the general public. Now, to discuss this matter, we are joined in our Nelspruit studio by Umfana Phakadi, the Director, Infrastructure and Planning for the Mpumalanga Department of Health, and they're based in Mbombela. A very good morning to you, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Eben, for having us in the studio.
Various hospitals in a state of disrepair is what we've just reported. Your reaction to that, or are they fixed now?
Well, Eben, it is true that a few years back there has been an assessment that was done, and our state of infrastructure was not good. But however, what we basically have done as a department, we've responded in terms of that infrastructure rehabilitation and upgrade. As I'm speaking to you, we've also got one of the hospitals which came out from the assessment, which was actually quite an extensive assessment that called for the demolition. So like Sabi Hospital, we awarded that contract in terms of upgrading and reconstruction of the hospital early this year, and we can safely say that we actually run about at 66%, where we again, this project is geared at changing the infrastructure so that our people that are working on these facilities are actually having a qualitative service, and also the environment is of good quality. And also, I think also it's not only SAPI, we've also have gone in and invested in terms of the maintenance program that we've done in terms of the ensuring that these facilities, they receive maintenance. We also have gone in terms of implementing, constructing new facilities as we are speaking that are actually on planning.
There have been some delays with these upgrades. Are those stumbling blocks being dealt with, or are there still things causing slight delays?
Well, Eben, one wouldn't call it delays in terms of this happening. You know, remember when we have to do, you are working in an environment like a health sector, you need to ensure that there's very careful planning that's invested in that. So therefore, those actually time frame or the lag time that has been invested on planning, so that we ensure that when we get to a facility or a hospital, we ensure that there's no disturbance in terms of the services that are being done. So therefore, in terms of where we are basically still on course in terms of delivering, in terms of what we should be doing. So there hasn't been any delays that I could call of. Whatever that the lag time has been invested on planning to ensure that we don't actually disrupt service delivery.
Let's talk about the hospitals affected. How many are there, and how many are there that are in a critical state, if I may ask that?
Well, Eben, if you recall, the Human Rights Commission, when they looked at this assessment, they categorized these facilities, which was one category which was actually in a not so much bad state, and we had about 7 hospitals. The one that just needed in the middle part in terms of extensive repairs, there are about 12. Then the rest was 8. So basically, in terms of our responsive plan, we basically have followed this plan in thereof.
And what are the priorities within this plan that you've isolated?
Well, as I alluded earlier, well, the priority is to look, in terms of the most severely affected areas. But however, having said that, we cannot leave those other facilities unattended to. Hence, we are running 2 parallel processes. We're running the process of ensuring that we're doing comprehensive maintenance to these facilities to ensure that they are sustainable, they can still go forward. We're also going in terms of the parallel process of ensuring that we're doing the new construction and upgrade, which, as I alluded earlier, your Sabi Hospital is one of them, which already, as we're speaking, it's advancing stage. Temba Hospital can be also be accounted in terms of those ones that already were making an impact. And also in terms of progress, we are advancing. You know, we basically have covered quite a lot of ground. Also, again, if you look at Rob Ferreira, which has been also the talk of the town, to date, as we are speaking, that we've covered quite a lot of ground in terms of ensuring that one of the areas accommodation has been addressed thereof.
Now, I've read that there's one orthopedic surgeon serving 33 public hospitals over there. Has that been resolved, or have you made alternative arrangements to deal with that?
Well, can you repeat that question? I didn't get that.
I say there's one orthopedic surgeon serving 33 hospitals. How have you come to terms with that problem?
Well, if you are looking at an infrastructure solution to that, where in terms of our planning that we've addressed on these new current upgrades that we are doing and also the new facilities. But from the clinical perspective, I think the department is already addressing those issues. So I wouldn't be able to comment in terms of the clinical areas. But in terms of infrastructure, the department, in terms of our unit, is basically addressing those, ensuring that we don't have an overpopulation or an oversupply of such.
Finally, I want to ask you about the overall budget and then the time frames that you're looking at to come to terms with most of the problems.
Well, if you are looking at the current budget that the province is currently having, is about 634 million odd. That is actually geared in terms of ensuring that we change in terms of new and replacement, upgrade and rehabilitation. But we've also have looked in terms of the 3 to 5 year plan that is looking in terms of making sure that these facilities are upgraded. Now, we did our budget, that increases run up, but next year we've got about 670 odd. There is a budget that is going to be a short-term, medium solution. But however, the province, if you recall, our premier has actually gone into to seek for assistance from external parties, where we are going to be ensuring that these facilities that needs to be constructed, there's partnership with the external parties. This is also driven by our mega institute in the province.
Thank you for joining us. Umfana Phakathi is the Director of Infrastructure Planning for the Mpumalanga Department of Health. We were talking about, well, the issues they've been facing with hospitals there in the province, quite a few of them in disrepair. He assures us that well, it's a work in progress and that things are improving exponentially there. Now we move on. South Africa's most notorious and controversial puppet, Chester Missing, is making his way to the Johannesburg Theatre from the 20th of October, that's a little bit later this month, till the 8th of November. As always, Chester will be accompanied by his faithful sidekick, Conrad Koch. Conrad was also insisting on dragging two other puppets around with him, Ronnie, the monster, who's been known to try to sell drugs to audience members, and Conrad's life coach and mentor, Charles Hillary, the vodka-soaked ostrich. Now, they're joining us live from Cape Town this morning. Should be a little bit of fun. I was going to ask Elvis to come and join us. Elvis, please come and join us. Here we go. Elvis, what is the question that you'd like to ask Conrad about the upcoming show? Morning to you.
That's not Conrad.
That's not Conrad.
That's not Conrad. Who are we speaking to?
That's not Conrad. Guys, can you help us here? What's happening?
Conrad is not.
Conrad.
Where's Conrad?
Conrad's not with us.
In fact, let's maybe just continue to find out what is happening, and then we can come back to Conrad to find out from his perspective the latest shows that he's doing. Plus, he was missing, as you can recall, on a flight back to South Africa. We want to know what happened with that, and his upcoming shows is also fantastic. So we're going to
it should be great. I mean, it's
in the news as well.
It's always a great show. Anyhow, I think it's time for us to take a short break. Let's get it all together. We'll be back with you right after this.
Right now, welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat, and I've got your sports in this hour. The Proteas and hosts India get their second one-day international underway in indoor in central India. India won the toss and elected to bat, losing 2 wickets before the 13th over. A very short while ago, they were down 3 wickets already with 82 runs on the board. Let's take a quick look at the visuals coming to you live from Indore in India.
Little moments like this at the start of the innings, it's a big relief for somebody like Dhoni. When he can just get the scoreboard ticking. He's got 6 of 7.
Yeah, that's what Dhoni looks to do as well when he first comes in. He doesn't take too many risks, looks to keep rotating the strike, and that's perhaps one of the reasons why AB de Villiers is employing Behradeen from the other end, so that he can get through when MS Dhoni is not in the mood of taking bowlers on.
Yeah, because he's trying to sort of read Mahendra Singh Dhoni, and he's sort of assuming that Dhoni will not go after Behardeen. He'll be more concerned about just getting into his rhythm. But Dhoni can then pull off a surprise by going after Behardeen. Attack the part-time bowling option. Slight hesitation there. No harm done.
Now, of course, you'll remember that the Proteas wrapped up the T20 series by winning 2 and 1 getting washed out. They won the first ODI, and India definitely under pressure to try and get a result in this ODI. So we'll see how that score goes later on. Now, South Africa will be looking to continue with the momentum gained after their shock opening defeat to Japan when they face Wales in the Rugby World Cup quarter-final at Twickenham on Saturday, the 17th of October. Let's take a look. Since losing their opening match 34-32 to the Japanese, the Springboks have beaten Samoa, Scotland and the USA, conceding just 1 try in the 3 matches.
to win Group B and set up a meeting with Warren Gatland's Welsh side.
Yeah, it's massive for us. If you look at Wales, physical direct team, so it's vital for us to keep continuity, keep momentum. What we want to take into the game is just the confidence of the last 3 weeks, and we expect another physical game, tough one, but one that we're excited about. We can't wait for the weekend.
Fast line speed, lots of numbers on their feet, putting sides under pressure with their defence. They kick lots of high balls, lots of cross-field contestables, which they chase down with huge intensity. So we'll have to deal with all of that. And obviously we'll leave no stone unturned in our preparation this week.
The Welsh Dragons are also looking forward to the clash.
The players have been absolutely fantastic, and you know, it's 1 week that we've got. It's knockout football. It's a quarter-final to look forward to. And look, if you had said to us 6 to 8 weeks ago, would you take a quarter-final against South Africa? Yeah, of course you would, and it's something that we're looking forward to from a coaching perspective and a playing perspective.
Yeah, we've had a lot of battles against them in the last 12, 18 months, so we know what they're all about. It's a case of us, making sure we're on the ball Saturday and ready to go.
The last time these two sides met was in November last year, when Wales broke a 15-year losing streak against the Boks, winning 12-6 in Cardiff. This time they'll meet at Twickenham. Kickoff is at 5 p.m. on Saturday, the 17th of October.
Move on to other sports news, and Bafana have wrapped up their Central America tour with a 1-1 draw against Honduras at the Metropolitano Stadium in San Pedro Sula. Both goals were scored in the first half. It's been a successful campaign after a 1-0 win over Costa Rica last week.
Honduras were a more physical team as compared to Costa Rica. They made it difficult for Bafana to play their one-touch interpassing game. Shakes Mashaba had made 3 changes for this match. Kamuelo Mokocho, Ayanda Patose and Jabulani Shongwe's contributions did not live up to expectation. However, credit should also be given to the Honduras players who made sure they closed down the Bafana midfielders. Unlike in the previous match, Bafana took more time to settle down, taking them at least 30 minutes before they could complete 4 to 5 passes. But prior to that, in the 7th minute, the visitors forced back-to-back corner kicks. The second kick was headed home by defender Eric Matoho. However, the home team responded with a goal 5 minutes later. Goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune paid away Rubilio's Castillo attempt before Eric Andino headed home from the rebound. South Africa were dealt a blow when Thulani Serrero suffered an injury and was replaced by Sibusiso Vilakazi. The introduction of the Bidvest player in the 25th minute did make some difference. Bafana seemed more determined and made attempts at goal. In the second half, Honduras increased their tempo, threatening the Bafana goal mouth. But South Africa's defense stood firm as the match ended in a draw. Lebang SABC News.
Now on to tennis news. Kevin Anderson will face 6th-seeded Kei Nishikori of Japan in the 3rd round of the Shanghai Masters in China. The 12th-seeded South African beat Italian Fabio Fognini 6-3, 7-6 earlier today. Nishikori had a tough battle against Australian teenager Nick Kyrgios, but eventually advanced in 3 sets. Now, Kyrgios looked dangerous from the onset and raced through a first set against an out-of-sorts Nishikori. The Australian hit 15 winners as he won it 6-1 in 29 minutes. The 6th seed, however, lifted his game in the second and levelled matters when he clinched it 6-4. The third was a seesaw battle, but Nishikori kept his cool to bag it 6-4 and advance to the 3rd round. And organizers hosting the F1 race in Mexico said final touches on a revamped track are nearly complete as the country prepares for its first Grand Prix in 23 years in November. The race will be held at the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez in Mexico City, which has undergone a major makeover. And Julian Abed, the circuit director at the International Motorsport, which represents Mexico in the Formula One Association, said the track was close to 92% complete, with everything related to the security zones and escape routes on the bends ready and finished. The return was originally planned for 2014, but the organizers could not update the track in time. The circuit, which had hosted Grand Prix from 1963 to 1970 and again in 1986 to 1992, was reconfigured from the layout last used when Nigel Mansell won in 1992. Resurfacing as well as changes to the ultra-fast right-hander at the end of the lap, that's Peraltada, were undertaken to comply with FIA regulations. There are 2 Mexican drivers currently on the F1 grid. That's Esteban Gutierrez at Sauber and Force India's Sergio Perez, who have been both bankrolled by the son of the richest man in Mexico, Carlos Slim. The November 1 race in Mexico City will be paired with the U.S. Grand Prix in Austin, Texas, which take place on the weekend just before.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sport action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
Welcome to Network, a technology news program that also discusses what's trending in social media in and around Africa. MTN has launched its new movie and television streaming service, Front Row. If it's trending, we will find it. That's Network with me, Siphumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
Stand by. All systems ready. Three, two, one.
Media Monitor, the title says it all. Can we really afford more job losses at such a critical time in our economy? Join our panel of experts as they unpack and monitor all the leading and breaking news stories making waves in the print and social media platforms. It seems we don't have a famous son-in-law any longer. Levi, what do you say to this? An A-lister.
I'll leave this one to Levi. He's the romantic.
Watch Media Monitor with me, Alicia Jali, Sundays at 9 a.m. only on the SABC News Channel.
SABC brings to you Rugby World Cup 2015.
Let's do this.
Welcome back. Now, earlier we were supposed to speak to Conrad Koch and we couldn't get hold of him. We had Katisi Masimola in studio. So the Food and Allied Workers Union has raised concerns about the much talked about merger of SAB Miller with AB InBev. Now, the union says it was not consulted. We now have Katisi Masimola, the General Secretary of FAWU, in studio there. Mr. Masimola, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good day and thanks for having us.
Now, the shareholders are jumping up and down. They're screaming that they're making a big profit, but you are not so happy. Tell me why.
Well, we know that the shareholders will be smiling all the way to the bank, but not all stakeholders are going to benefit from this transaction. Transactions of this nature essentially will lead to job losses because there will be rationalizations of operations, there will be removal of duplications, there will be rationalizations of brands. And our history, our experience tells us that at some point we will experience job losses, and that's why we are not excited.
Now, why is this so important for you that this deal does not go through? Is it just because of the job losses?
Well, it's because of the job losses from our immediate interest, but also as South Africans, we believe that the impact, negative impact, that this transaction will have on the tax base or a reduced inflows of revenue to the fiscus of our state will mean that our government will have less to spend on social grants and other imperatives. And that's why we're not excited about this transaction.
Now, SAB Miller would argue that this is a business decision. It's got nothing to do with labor. Would you agree with that statement?
Well, they would be right, from a narrow perspective. But remember, they are a business located in South Africa, operating on the planet. Other stakeholders have the right to express their views, have the right to explore other avenues that they have to basically oppose this transaction. And that's what we intend doing by approaching the competition authorities in this country and by also liaising with other unions of our similar nature across the world, that they must use jurisdictions in their countries to oppose this transaction.
Now, as the Food and Allied Workers Union, what would you like to see done?
Well, the job security remains a priority for our members working at SAB Miller. But like I said, as a citizen, a reduced tax base is not an exciting thing. And that's why we'll encourage the Treasury and government to basically join us in opposing this transaction. Well, and to us, that's the bottom line.
Well, the deal is on the table. They've made the offer. There's the final hurdle, of course, with the Competition Commission, but that would be it. What next?
Oh, of course. We will use that avenue of the Competition Commission, and we will take this matter all the way to the Competition's Appeals Court, if needs be. And that's why we would invite the Treasury to join us in that move. But we'll also use other avenues available at our disposal, because we cannot just allow this measure to go through successfully, because we know what the consequences are.
Mr. Masimola, thank you so much for your time and your patience in our Cape Town studio there.
Thanks for having us.
That was the FAO General Secretary chatting to us from our Cape Town studio. Now, there is the Wits University on Empire Road. Apparently, there is some disruptions there. And Anine will tell us a little bit more about that once again. Anine, what's happening there?
Yes, well, Elvis, like we said earlier, it's because of the SRC's march that they've arranged, because of an increase in fees for 2016. It seems on Twitter as if the situation has gotten a bit chaotic, and we see students tweeting from the campus this morning. Let's just take a look at what they've been saying. We know the hashtag there to follow is hashtag Wits fees must fall. They say, get a loan to fund your fees. How do you get a loan if no one at your home qualifies? Hashtag Wits fees must fall. Then Henk says, today Wits will probably be burned to the ground. The same can be said for every other university. The tweet in here coming in saying, the black child gets educated as well. Hashtag Wits fees must fall. There we see pictures coming from the university. I know students are sitting in the road blocking the entrance. So Elvis, guys, like I've said, chaotic scenes coming from the Wits campus this morning.
Thank you, Anine. That's the update there. Well, that's all the time we have for you here on Newsroom.
We don't have time to look at the cricket, maybe?
I think it would be fantastic.
Can we look at the cricket, Johan? Just before we go, please. I think we just got a wicket, if I'm not mistaken. India in trouble again, Kendall. Happy days. It's coming. Come now. Come now. Come on. There we go.
There we go.
Is that another wicket, Kendall? What's the score there? 5 down. Don't you joke. No joke. South Africa is making the hard yards in India right now. Kendall, did you expect South Africa to start so well in this on this tour?
Considering how well they started off the T20s, it was a surprise, but we got over the surprise and like that 2-0 win, and Rabada has been on song, and the rest of the team is actually like coming to the party as well. So as you can see, 5 wickets down, and it seems like India's reeling.
They're reeling. Elvis, you're not much of a cricket man, are you?
Well, I tell you what, rugby cricket, that's my thing, man.
Is it?
I can tell you now, it looks very good right now. At 105 for 4, is it?
105 for 4. South Africa well on top. I know Aneen is not a sports lover.
No, not cricket. I can do rugby. Big rugby supporter, but not cricket.
She can do rugby.
No, fantastic stuff.
That's
I'm enjoying
fantastic.
this
Great to see you, man. Great to see South Africa on top. Elvis?
Well, from myself, Elvis Preston.
Eben Janssen.
Me, Kendall Makamate.
And Anindumau.
We bid you farewell. Arrivederci.
Legamos.